Okay. So welcome everyone to the first day of the seventh edition of your symposium. I will let Didier give a small introduction.
Yeah. Good day, everybody. I'm always happy when it is possible to meet a scientist, and to meet a longevity activist, and to meet people also specialized in AI, and who are eager to share ideas concerning health data, artificial intelligence for more resilience and longevity. These topics will be discussed in person and virtually. I begin with a few very technical aspects. So the venue is here in Brussels today and tomorrow. There is coffee, and there will be, like today, a small lunch with sandwiches tomorrow. There will be also an informal dinner from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Royal Indian Restaurant Rue de la Fourche, a 2-minute walk from the Grand Place. Each speaker will have 30 minutes, questions include, so there will be normally plenty of time for questions, and at the end of today and at the end of next day, there will be a larger discussion and involving the speakers present and of course people wanting to ask questions. For online participants, you may use the chat for questions. We will read them, and you may also ask the word by raising your virtual hand. The question time is normally limited to 2 minutes for each intervention. If there are many questions, priority will be given to those who were not asking questions yet. Now, about the conference content. I will first read you a quote of the text of the FAQ about the European Health Data Space on a European website. The European Health Data Space will empower individuals across the EU by giving them more control over their health data. People will be able to access and share this data more easily, while retaining greater control over them. This is fully in line with our overall EU approach to data protection and complement existing rules. Every second, all over the EU, doctors, nurses, pharmacists, researchers, and health regulators generate and use large number of essential healthcare data that are critical to their life-saving work. Health data are the blood running through the veins of our healthcare systems. The COVID-19 pandemic has shown that up-to-date health data is key to inform effective public health measures and response to crisis. And I would add, and sometimes has shown that it was not even working perfectly, but okay. The pandemic has also triggered a huge acceleration in the uptake of digital tools, but complex obstacles remain that make it difficult to reach the full potential of digital health and health data. In other words, in my words, the effective sharing of health data will save lives, many lives, directly by giving doctors and medical people in general direct access to patients' online records, but even more lives indirectly by accelerating medical research. But the problem is what is happening really. After years of preparation and discussions, the text of the EAGS, I will use the abbreviation for the rest of this introduction, this brief introduction. The text of the EAGS was approved by two committees of the European Parliament on December 13, 2023. So there was one committee competent for health and one committee competent for civil liberties. Then there was the plenary vote. The plenary vote was on 24 April 2024. So already 5 months later, and we are now in November. It was 24 April 2024, and it was with an overwhelming majority, 445 votes in favor, 142 against, and 39 abstentions. So we are now 5 months later, and the text is still not published. Why? Because the text still needs to undergo a legal review for concordance with other European texts and translation checks, and the process will likely not be finalized before early 2025. After that, it will take another 6 years before it is fully applicable, before it comes entirely into operation. It should not take so much time. Actually, the EHDS has only one main goal, not so complicated. It's to make sharing of health data in Europe better, safer, and easier for patients and for research. That's not simple, but that's not so complicated once again, and that's all. And the biggest problem is slowness. So many people, organizations speak about ethics and laws. I want to keep it simple. It is unethical to lose time, and it is illegal, I don't know how to pronounce this, sorry, to lose time when the consequence is that people die. And I hope that public and private institutions will apply the rules before they are compulsory to prove their efficiency and to save lives. Once data will be better available, it will be easier to use AI based on what citizens share to understand based on what citizens share to understand better disease related to old age, to improve drugs, to find more therapies, to make us more resilient. We try to summarize those goals in a text that you may comment until the end of the 2 days. You will receive a mail with the link, and it is also in the chat, the link, and that we will approve if there is enough consensus at the end of the conference. Thank you. Shivani.
Okay, thank you, Didier. Can someone online please confirm that they can hear me?
Thumbs up, yeah.
Check. Perfect. Okay, so we will start with our first talk of the day. So please join me in welcoming our first speaker, Karina Dantes. She has a PhD in biomedical sciences. She was working as a reviewer with the European Commission for 5 years. Currently, she's a board member of the SHAFE Foundation, which stands for Smart, Healthy, Age-Friendly Environment. And she has 20 plus years of experience in this field. And the title of her talk will be Better Sharing of European Health Data Patients' Perspective. The floor is yours, Karina.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I hope you can hear me well. I don't fully understand everything that is said there, but I hope you can hear me well. And I will now try to share my presentation to see if everything is working properly.
Until now, it's okay.
Yeah, okay, good. Can you see it well?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So, as I said, I couldn't fully understand the initial words, but just to also give a short frame. So, I'm Karina Dantas. I'm Portuguese. I have an SME called Shine to Europe, based in Portugal, which works mainly around the promotion of inclusive communities. Of course, this concept of trying to enhance inclusion is very much related to also ensuring that everyone is represented when we talk about the sharing of health data. So we work mainly around European research, applied research, very much around ethics and policy, and also social innovation. We currently have around 20 plus projects ongoing on different European funds, and a lot of them work around digital tools for health. So the whole issue about the sharing of health data is also circular to a number of them, very often connected as well with the use of artificial intelligence. And of course, I don't need to say this to anyone, but the truth is that there are a number of good aspects for sure of the possibility of having better data sharing, more personalized medicine, and of course the use of AI for societal good. But this is not only fully consensual. On the right side, let's say, there are a number of potential benefits as having better diagnosis, better treatment. Of course, the big issue of personalized care, for example, in cancer care, where I personally do a lot of activism, the idea of having a personalized understanding of what can be your best treatment and what can be done for you specifically instead of using only generic guidelines. This is, of course, a huge landscape for the future that for sure will help to tackle a lot of NCDs, such as cancer, for example. And this, of course, means as well that public health will be improved and cost efficiency would come. In fact, according to several surveys, here I pasted one, but there are a number of different ones. In general, people say that they support the sharing of health data for research purposes, for the provision of healthcare. However, there is still a number of issues that arise, for example, like being trustworthy on the security of data or what happens with it. And there is always a bit this ghost of what will happen with my data, how will it be used in the future, and eventually if it can come against me in future healthcare decisions. This is very connected with the overall understanding of the ethical use of data and also how it can be commercialized in different situations. I didn't put it here, but I remember having one of these surveys with a lot of people in Europe answering maybe around 1,000, where well, maybe 70, 80, 90% were saying that they were okay with sharing their data with a health or research organization, but less than 10% would be available to share with the company, a for-profit organization. And this is because I think there is still a lot of this idea that data may be used for the wrong reason and may be commercialized. Of course, it's not the nature of the organization that does this, but this is, of course, a legitimate concern, which is still not fully addressed and needs for sure some more work. Then we have bigger issues. These are some of the societal issues, but we also still struggle with a lot of fragmented systems for interoperability, with standards that are not fully aligned. And this is for sure something which directly impacts the implementation of the European health data space. So we can say that from the side of the patients, the systems, as I was saying, are less of an issue. Of course, they are a big transversal issue. But from the side of the patient, there's a lot of issues still with equality in access to the systems. The overall sharing of data is based on digital support. And this, of course, is not still fully solved for those who are less literate or have less access to digital tools, for example, as the older population. And it is still quite complex to tackle all of the issues regarding the use of digital tools. For example, a patient in a focus group was saying that, well, I just tick the consent form as I do on every online privacy notice. So I don't really read it, or I'm not fully aware of what it means. I just tick it so that I can proceed. This is, of course, something that is not fully helpful to be able to ensure that people are actually aware of how things are processed and therefore that their concerns are legitimate. The truth is that this big data sharing is still fostering some concerns in terms of trust. The Eurobarometer was saying that most patients were willing to share their data if they trust the system, but this trust is still something very complex and difficult to ensure. And to enhance this trust, people want to have more transparency. So they want to know how their data is being used, who is using it, and for which purpose. Of course, this is impossible to track, especially if you are working with pseudo-anonymized or anonymized data, and if you are working already with, for example, the secondary use of data. But there needs to be some kind of information that can be allowed to patients to understand what will be the purpose of sharing their data, so that this becomes clearer and perhaps also streamlined in more options and possibilities. And of course, then there's always something that people tend to address, which is to try to understand who at the end will own their data. Can they access it at any time? Can they ask to delete it? Of course, the GDPR states a number of things, but then in practice, it is difficult to understand how to make this actionable. And there are still a lot of electronic health records which are not electronic. We still have a lot of paper records. And even if these didn't raise before a concern in the patient's minds, the truth is that there's a lot of health data that is still in different places where it cannot be easily retrieved, like old storages or archives in hospitals. So in truth, most people seem to say that they would prefer to have a good electronic access to their health records, but still this is far from being a reality in terms of the infrastructure in different countries. So what can we say from the side of patients? Well, we need to have a better dialogue between people in general. That means either patients as those who are actually suffering from a disease, but also all of us as citizens as we go along life in our different roles. And citizens and patients need to be seen as partners, not just as data providers. So it's good to understand that some people will want to know more about their health data sharing, others won't. But anyway, we should have as much as possible places where this open dialogue works. Because if we have better data, then of course we'll also have better healthcare, and this is good for everyone. Because at the end, what we want is to increase the possibilities of having healthier lives, and this, of course, is good for all of us. So how do we work at Shine in this area? Well, we try to tackle the issues around promoting better inclusion, which, as mentioned, also include here the discussions on health data through 3 key areas. So on one side, trying to provide more knowledge, and especially bringing social innovation and social sciences as a key aspect of this discussion. Then trying to produce this knowledge not only for research purposes, but especially also to inform policy. So it is very important that everything that we gather through the research process is also translated to evidence-based recommendations that can help policymakers to take decisions. And as the third pillar of this, let's say, try to use also this information to guarantee that people receive reliable information, that they have good tools, and that they feel more empowered and able to participate in discussions around different topics. So in truth, we work a lot around this idea of fostering a more trustworthy AI, which is still something which will take a long time to ensure. But what we try to align is the different actors and stakeholders involved in the processes with the technology, and then with the implementation aspects of the health systems. So for this to work in different areas of research, we try, of course, to go through the different points more digitally connected that ensure a more trustworthy AI, such as, for example, fairness, traceability, robustness, etc. Also taking into account that people always need to be taking the decisions, so ensuring human agency, and of course data safety and data protection. But a big focus is how to put this in practice, so working around the pathways towards implementation. for ensuring that something will actually reach us as patients, as people, we need to make sure that the different breadth of stakeholders are involved. So not only researchers or not only public authorities or industry, but having all of us in the loop and ensuring that we are all talking to each other and producing further knowledge together. So for this, we try to have in the different projects a good work around stakeholder engagement and having different workshops, social innovation labs, living labs, different policy sessions where people come together and try to discuss the different issues that arise on a specific context regarding a specific tool that may enable it to work better. So for example, here we have this clustering of the different challenges that goes for at the individual level, technical level, organizational or societal, and we try to address them one by one, providing either solutions that can work or identifying those challenges that are still out of our hands to solve, but that we can provide, for example, back to policymakers or to other actors to be addressed in the future. So at the end, we do think that if we put together all of the relevant stakeholders, but actually together discussing and collaborating and be sure to understand the societal challenges around each of the topics, then we can promote more inclusiveness, more participation in developing the different products and services, and at the end, be sure that people actually understand what they can benefit from. They are literate enough and educated enough to provide their opinions, and they can then fully be engaged in promoting, in this case, a more trustworthy AI, a better access to health data sharing, and increased outcomes in terms of policy. So in short, patients want for sure more to be able to trust any digital solutions, and the HDS is not different from this. Understand how they work and have some control over their data sharing. And of course, the HDS presents a wonderful opportunity to ensure this, but we really need to include patients and citizens in all of the discussions. Because at this point, also at the EU level, European in general, we need to ensure that we, despite all of the pressure to be stronger at the commercial level, that we still need to ensure a number of guiding principles and state clearly that ethics and an ethical use and sharing of data is still on our key priorities. This leverage between allowing innovation to progress and ensuring that it is ethical and respects all of our main societal principles is not easy, but I do think that we can work along this and try to make a good balance of it. Thank you very much. I hope this was relevant enough for this discussion, and I'm very happy to reply to any questions that may exist. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina.
Yes. Do we have any questions here?
Well, I'm not sure if there is any technical problem or if you just want to move to the next presentation.
Just a second. So you cannot hear the questions, maybe?
No, I didn't hear anything just now. That's fine.
Okay. go ahead. Try again.
Do you hear me?
No.
Not very well.
Didier, maybe you can repeat the question.
Yeah.
Well, so our question is, how, in terms of like enabling people to share data, there is a huge problem that when citizen scientists just want to make like a distributed study to have a group of people, like by the way, we are doing it now on glucose values. It's feels like very bureaucratic for small volunteers to properly share their data with public data sets without going through crazy GDPR and ethics bureaucracy. And I think that such people are heavily discriminated. And I am curious how to actually enable people who want to share the data to actually share it easily.
Thank you. That's a very interesting question, and I wish I had a good answer for it. But in truth, I think the people that are now, and for a few years already, super available and interested to share data are a way of their time, because there is still not a good existing infrastructure to do this. The problem is that even if we are discussing the European health data space for a long time, the regulatory aspects and the technological aspects are not still on the right place to allow for this data donation, as it was called some years ago, which was very much requested, especially by all of the research and policy institutions, and people were actually feeling available to do this, but the infrastructure and the regulatory framework are still lagging behind. So as I say, I would like to have a good reply for you, because I do think it is kind of a blunt effort to talk about all of this and then create an environment where people cannot do things easier and quicker and in a good manner. But I think we are still a bit behind of that time. So I hope in a few years this will be granted easily, but for now it is still very complex, as you were mentioning, to do this integration of data shared voluntarily with the public infrastructure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Karina. I have quite a few questions.
Okay.
Maybe, yeah, if nobody has a question, since we have plenty of time at the moment, it's great. I have, so I will begin with maybe the most important one in my eyes, at least. It is, let's suppose that you have all power, but in a democratic way. What would you do first, or what would you do in general to accelerate things, to make it easier and faster for patients who want to share their health data? Yeah, that's my first question.
Yeah, well, again, as I was saying before, and I think at the end everything will get there. We were closer some years ago to have this a commitment and let's say shared vision between the different member states to have a common regulation and common priorities in terms of policy to implement a number of things. As you know, after there was the COVID pandemic, and then there was there are still a number of geopolitical events that have been taking a lot of time and resources from other issues. So I do think that at this moment we are mostly lagging to prioritize this between member states. So not only at European level or at EU level or the Commission level, but especially member states need to invest strongly in having better coordination on the sharing of data, on the infrastructure, on the standards. This is still missing. While this is missing, it is impossible for us as societal members to do much more, because you need to have this in place to then allow for society to speak. I think it is one of the things that we can do and we should do and we try to do is to still keep this very high on our agendas and nag everyone we can, annoy everyone we can, reminding them that things are actually in a good place from the societal level, but we need policy and infrastructure to correspond. And this is, I think, a bit of activism we can
Okay.
and promote.
Okay. It was frozen, but just 2 seconds. I think it's okay. My second question was
Okay.
there were quite a few. Can you hear me? No, there was a.
Yes, it has some breaks, but yes.
Yeah, it was, yeah. So my second question was, until I would say 5 or 6 months ago, there were quite a few documents about altruistic databases, and this concept is kind of disappearing. Do you know why? Because, yeah, this is not really a question, it's more what I'm thinking. I think that many patients, when they are afraid of commercial use, and even more afraid, of course, that there is a commercial use against them. You know, like I am sick, insurance company will know about it, and I will have to pay more money. But why do you know more about this concept of altruistic databases, and why did it more or less disappear? If you.
Yeah, actually, I was working along with a number of organizations more within the Digital Health Society on this concept of putting forward a societal compact for altruistic sharing of data. As I say, as you mentioned, a lot of this was very high in the agenda. I think it is still high in the agenda for a number of organizations, but it disappeared a bit from the policy sphere. I don't think there is a reason for this in terms of not wishing to do it, but the fact is that it's still premature to put a lot of emphasis on the altruistic sharing of data if the infrastructure and the regulations are not there. So I'm sorry for going in circles again, but I think this is it. You lose a little bit of momentum if you promote a lot a concept amongst citizens and try to promote the altruistic sharing, and then you don't provide the conditions to do it. So I think maybe it's just disappearing a bit to be able to have the conditions first and then go back. This would be my impression.
Thank you, Karina. Yeah, I will stop now because I will not monopolize, you know. I see in the chat that there is one question, but it's more to share. So from Hans Constant, who is one of the speakers. Dear Karina, can you share in the resources of this
Yeah, sure.
number on data sharing? Interesting to see how things are evolving, and of course,
I can share some of these survey results, for example, with you, Didier, and then you can distribute if you agree.
Yeah.
Is this okay? I will send it by email
sure.
then.
That's a general comment for the speakers today and tomorrow. You can send, if you agree to share, you send me your presentation. Well, otherwise, anyway, it's online, but okay.
Yeah, sure.
So, Shivani, the word is yours.
Okay, thanks again, Karina, for that great presentation. It was very useful. So we will move to our next speaker. Our next speaker is a longtime friend of HEALS, Alexander Titz. He's the founder. I'm sorry, Alex, I have translated everything from German to English because my German is terrible. So Alexander is the founder of Society of Healthy Aging and Prevention and one of the first members of HEALS. He is also a member of the German Society of Aging Research. He is trained in law. He worked in a lot of think tanks before, and then he decided to join the staff of European Parliament. Today he will present his presentation on sharing of health data and German longevity organizations. So over to you, Alex.
Just technical, 1 second, Alex. I give you the word, but I have to make a few. Go ahead. I should work.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I actually didn't notice. I sent you the German abstract. Yes, thank you for organizing everything, especially for the day. It's a real pleasure to be to your symposium in Brussels again, I would say. And I still have my hopes up that I will join you later this evening. There has been some train coalition next to Cologne, so there's really no way at the moment. But I think in the evening maybe there will be a way. Yeah, so my name is Alexander. I work at the German Bundestag, National Parliament of Germany. But my presentation are, of course, just my very personal views. And although I studied law with international relations, my presentation is, of course, as usual, not any legal advice. So I start with this, being German, of course, I start with a car. So, and we will probably later talk a lot about data protection and how it's bad and how it's good and everything. So just want to make this point that data protection is a bit like brakes, but why do cars have brakes? In order to go faster. So I would argue that good data protection is actually better than having no data protection, also for a fast enabling research. So I skip to the first few and I come to the German situation. So I think what we actually want all is to talk about enhancing research and innovation. So if you're discussing this topic, I think we can, let's say, no matter how different our point of views may be, we can agree that properly conducted health data research will benefit us all and is urgently needed to foster innovation, to do better research, but also to even maintain, at least for Germany, I can say this, to even maintain a quality of our healthcare system as it is now, because it's we will not be able to keep it. So with this short introduction, I go a little bit deeper in the German world. So first I look at the status quo, then we dive a little bit into the Health Data Utilization Act, the new law in Germany, and then a bit more future orientated to the EU health data space. Then finally, vision of how maybe we could shape new regulations, and see what we can do. I was asked to also say a little bit about German longevity organizations. Maybe put this to the questions at the end, but also I can highlight there a few points if you want. So where do we start? When it comes to health data, as with actually all personal data, we begin with the GDPR and the supplements in Germany, such as the Federal Data Protection Act. So they serve as a fundamental framework. So however, there are major changes with a specific provision for processing health data. So especially due to how the GDPR has been integrated into our German national law. So there are a lot of challenges. For instance, the rules processing health data in Germany are very diverse. One might even call it a bit chaotic. It's a lot of patchwork and regulations, as Germany has also a lot of 16 regions, which all have their different, each of them has their own, actually Bavaria has 2 data protection officers, makes cooperation between clinics from different, for example, clinics from different regions not so easy. So in general, the processing of health data means, or is regulated in Article 9 of the GDPR. So the key question is always, which clause applies to research? So there's a consent in Article 9, together with 6 and 7. There's one possible pathway, and this works in theory. In practice, this consent you can give there is often not sufficient enough because it's too limited for data availability, practical challenges in managing this consent, and especially what a consent is and how broad a consent is also something very, very important and also tricky when it comes to research. So in reality, we often rely on Article 9.2, which is especially designed for scientific research. So looking further at GDPR, it's clear that the European legislator recognizes the value of scientific research, particularly on the content of health data processing. So this is also reinforced in Article 98. So, for example, we allow the reuse of data collected for other purposes, like medical treatments, as long as it's compatible with the original purpose. And that's already a problem, already questioned. What is the original purpose compared to what we do with it, or what people want to do with it? So there are exceptions to start limitations. Maybe I skipped a few more lower details. In practice, I often come across ambitious idea for handling health data that then cannot be implemented. So the main reason is the legal uncertainties with the highly legal regulatory environment. So the mix of federal laws, varying from state level to state level, interfering with the hospital laws, which make a compliance a real big challenge for research projects. So so I sometimes experience that if companies or universities can choose where to start their research, they often, although Germany has a very good basic research, if they can, they often don't start the new projects in Germany. So I continue to what makes it also a problem. So then focusing a bit more on the consent. So the definition of health data has been interpreted quite broadly. So the ECJ just, I think, in the beginning of the year, there was a ruling clarifying that pseudonymous data is considered personal data if it can be reasonably linked to an individual. So we already have the problem if you give consent, if you was talking about anonymization or pseudonymization, and this technically is evolving in a way. So something what we already said, it's not linkable to a person anymore 20 years, it's not let's say true anymore today. Yeah. So that's, I would say, is a big question on how to deal with this. This is actually critical, given that the significant investments, for example, commercial entities might consider to make. So we discussed a little bit about broad consent models. So like, for example, proposed by the Medical Information Initiative, that's not yet data donation, but I would say it's the second best you can actually do. So we checked if maybe that's the way, and we see that some organizations work with this, but some organizations don't. They actually say that for them, they reject it because they have the fear that it's not actually legally strong enough. So the ECJ actually has ruled that the consent must be specific and informed with the severe limits of the flexibility of the consent frameworks. So, for example, the decision on telephone directories established with individuals, they must understand how the data will be used. A standard that poses even a stricter challenges for health data research. So I would say we're getting in a more and more complex situation. So my hope is actually that now with the European health data space, we will actually be in a way forced to do more to do more digitalization and make more use of our data. So in this response to the complexities of the legislator, Germany has now passed the Data Utilization Act, and the EU Health Data Space is is not yet implemented in Germany, but it's already, let's say, thought about. So already this Data Utilization Act has some provisions which we will need for the European health data space. So I think that's, at least we are on a good way, let's say. So we established a Central Data Access Authority, the BfArM, in Germany, which introduced new rules. So for linking and processing health data. And as we are expecting the health data space to be operational by 2026, we hope to have everything already running at this point, but this is really also a hope. So taking you once again a bit back to the German mindset, let's say, I would say that Germany is lagging behind technically, so we really don't have the infrastructure yet. We just having an electronic patient, in theory, we had an electronic patient record, which was just used by 0.5% of our population. Yeah. So now we will have a first real, let's say, electronic patient record with the beginning of next year. So we are really lacking behind also the infrastructure for that from the Nordic countries, let's say, by not centuries, but by a few tens of years, decades. Also, I think it's crucial to say that for Germans, it's not so, data protection for us is very valuable. So if you compare, for example, to the Nordic countries, where you would say even an opt-out situation for sharing health data for research is considered not good, because health and research is such a high value. In Germany, probably most Germans would say, I value very much my personal choice who I give my data to. So what is crucial, I think, is that the German authorities must, in a way, earn and maintain the trust of the population. But this trust is at risk at the moment. I would say there are a lot of concerns that are raised with sharing this health data with other EU member states that could lead to, let's say, our German GDPR standard. So additionally, there's criticism that the public is not adequately informed about the developments and the implementations of the EHDS. So, like mentioned, patients and researchers, so they stand to benefit from most of this initiative, I'm sure. But yet in Germany, the discourse remains dominated by the risks and dangers. I would say not so much of the opportunities and the benefits, but I hope it can, with a few NGOs, maybe make the case that we should focus more on the opportunities. So what I really liked was Professor Büchs. She's the former chair of the German Ethics Council. She actually put it, the goal must be to enable data usage, not to prevent it. So with this, I hope we will get there eventually. Just checking for the time of but we have time for this. So this is the
you have time, no problem.
Okay, so this is what in theory is planned. So the BfArM is already existing, but until now it's had still today has a bit of a different role. But in future, this should be designed as a central authority for data access, and it will strengthen the role of existing research centers. So even we put in the law, but the legislator put in the law, we really would love to have this one-stop approach to enable multiple parties to collaborate without requiring separate responsibilities for each. So a process that previously it was difficult. Previously, you had multiple supervisory authorities. So a key element of the law is the entitlement access linked to the data granting healthcare research, but the data will not go to the institutes. Yeah, they will be allowed to use the data and have access, but they cannot basically take the data. I would say the data linkage increases the risk to the individual. So which is there the law mandates a strict security measures and high penalties, which I think is always a good thing for lawyers. But no, but I think it should be a high penalty. So then we have more detailed regulations governing the access to data from, for example, cancer registries, because what legally is a cancer registry? Yeah, is it research? Is it just data holding center? So it's I think it's not totally clear yet. But another role will be played by the Federal Statistical Office and the World Koch Institute, which then must approve the request to do research, which is another let's say layer of oversight, but which is of course also a bit more bureaucratic, and I'm not yet 100% sure how this will work together with the one-stop shop vision. So yeah, that's what I briefly mentioned before. This what I think is at the moment in Germany the best thing you can do is this medical informatics initiative in Germany. They developed something like a broad consensus, which kind of uses the legal privilege of altruistic research. So I think this is something if one could use. Yeah, this is actually what the European Health Data Space is all about. It's taken from the Commission's website, but you probably know this now from the last presentation. Yeah, so I think I will stop here for questions, and then I can also go a bit more into if you want.
Yes, I have, like always, many questions, but yeah, I would prefer somebody else asking questions first. But if there is no volunteer, yeah. You have to come. It's better to come here because otherwise you will run into problems. You speak there, yeah, and the person can see you also. Yeah. Yes. No.
Okay, thanks for the presentation. Since in most European countries we have public health systems that are financed by individual contributions and taxes, so most of the population contributes to the system but also enjoys its benefits, would it not be reasonable then to assume that everyone who benefits from this system would also be willing to share their data for the benefit of the public, not for commercial use, but so that there would be a sort of implied consent that if you enjoy the benefits of the system, then in turn, one of your obligations is to also help to improve the system, help other citizens by contributing your health records, again, for public research and public benefit use, not for private use.
I would totally agree. I would say yes. This we could assume this, but I'm not sure if it's really true for the. It will not be true for everyone in Germany, but I'm not even sure if it's true for the majority of the population. But I would totally agree. Actually, now with this electronic patient record, it's even the case in Germany. It's, I would say, nearly 70 or 80% is public insurance, 20% is privately insured people. And for this electronic patient record, private, which is the first step, let's say, in Germany, yeah, because then you can have the data, then you can collect them in a way. The private insurers will actually not take part. At least that's how what we think at the moment. So it's also very, I would say, very strange that there's a divide there between the public and private insurers. But yeah, no, in general, I totally agree. I would say that it should be, we as or the government could try and make this case that it should be like this. Probably there will be then a decision by court, but yeah, I would say it's also worthwhile trying this. Yeah. Or is the Georg raised his hand?
Yeah, I totally agree with what was said by by Walter. But yeah, sadly, yeah, it is like you said also not the case that let's say many citizens seem not convinced by this idea. And I have a system following the words EHGS with what's called a Google Alert. And I saw quite a few Google Alerts for EHGS in Germany. And one was sadly Big Brother Award für Lauterbach. It's one of your ministers, I think, Minister of Health. Is it because there was, like you said, I didn't know about that. Is it because there is already a law to, let's say, for the application of the EHGS, even if it is not yet there as a legislation? Or is it for something else? Or maybe you don't know about this, but yeah.
So this is probably because of the because of the electronic patient record. I think that's probably why he got it, because there was a discussion on the data security of this record. And there were different systems proposed. And I would say some had the feeling, especially from, let's say, the hacker spaces, so this community which really knows how to how to get to data, but also I would say has really high knowledge in what you should do and should not do. I think he chose kind of the not so secure system in their eyes. Yeah. So some people said there's a better system of protecting this data. And basically, if Germany now are really, really, really late starting this electronic patient record, then start it right from the beginning and not start with the system, and then you have to take it down again in half a year because someone hacked the system. Because it actually happened in Germany with I'm not sure if it was the electronic ID. Yeah, I think it was the ID wallet, or was it the driver's license? It's one of the two systems where actually it was exactly like that. There was warnings before, but still they went on with it. Half a year later, they had to take the system down. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe I will ask to many speakers the same question, but in your eyes, what is the best thing that could be done, and that's not done at the moment, to accelerate sharing of health data? And maybe I will give an idea in Belgium, and I don't know what's the situation in Germany, but in Belgium you have this strange situation that at the moment it is still not an obligation for a medical doctor or from somebody from the health system to give access to electronic data of the patients, you know. It's only compulsory to give access at the paper. And this is, of course, crazy because I think more than 99% of data at the moment created for health is electronic data. Also, practically in most cases, hospitals accept to share, but in the European health data space text, there is a clear possibility for all citizens to have access to their data electronically. So to accelerate, I would say at least the kind of a consensus around citizens, would this not be something useful to say, yeah, if the EHGS is coming in action, you will have access to everything legally without electronically, but maybe not, I don't know, I'm asking.
So I'm not 100% sure how it is really at the moment. I think you have the right to, as long as it's stored on a computer, to get this data. I'm not sure that we always do it, but I think you have the right. But in future, it will be like this for sure. And we will not wait to the European Health Data Space, but we will start with electronic patient record. There, you will always get your data. It was actually even raised as a big concern by some hospitals that because they have their own, let's say, systems, right? Systems, so that it still is to some fear that maybe the patient will get the data before the doctor, and that could then maybe lead to not an easy situation, because maybe some patients really want a doctor to explain the data to them, and they will be shocked or whatever, so it was actually raised as concerns. I'm just saying this to highlight that, or to that I'm 100% sure it will be that you get your data as soon as the electronic patient record is there. Yeah. And then I have one to how to make it better. What to do now? Well, I would say what also works, what I think is true for healthcare in general, we need to form coalitions and increase pressure with civil society on politicians. Yes, I think actually the industry does quite a bit, because they put a lot of pressure, saying like we are losing basically we are losing Europe when it comes to research, so let's do something. But I would say we really need patient organizations, to go to their member of parliament, and because it's always difficult to say, like, if you see a patient or a patient organization, and it's not so easy to run away and say, yeah, but it's difficult, so I can't do anything. So yeah, I think that could be a way. I don't really know a better one. Of course, I still like the idea of also suing, actually starting to sue governments and saying like, look, you don't respect our right to health high enough, because you should do more. But this is all very experimental, let's say, very maybe it also takes years. So yeah, I think putting pressure on your member of parliament can work. Yeah. Actually, Georg raised his hand. Like,
I was going to say, George.
Yeah, hello to everyone, and sorry for not making it to Brussels. And thanks to Alexander for this information. I'm wondering, how do things change if a commercial exploitation is also considered? Like, it could be big pharma, but it could also be just a startup of 3 people who want to develop a longevity drug.
So I would say, as soon as we are getting in the European Health Data Space, and together with now the Gesundheitsdatennutzungsgesetz, I think as long as you can argue and make the case that you do research with it, you probably qualify to get this data, unless someone ruled out that it's forbidden to do it in an economic interest. So there I would be optimistic that will be possible. Yeah.
Okay, and would there be strings attached? Like, in principle, I have no problems that this company has to give back, but of course, giving back to individual people makes it so complicated. This is undoable. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, in general, there was the idea that it would be great if you give your data, you also see what happens with your data, and you get something back. But I think this is not how it will turn out. So I think you don't have to inform the individual. But there, I'm not 100% sure how it in the end will work out. But I think in general, what Germany was a bit afraid of is that what will happen is you give your data, the companies will do something with it, but you will not hear back because they will say, oh, it's our secret, it's our, so we can't tell anyone because then we will lose money. But basically they will make money with your data. So, and you won't have anything from it. So this is where they're trying to find a way to also get something back for the patients, but I'm not sure how this will work out in the end.
Yeah, and another problem is company ownership. So even if a company is now a small German company, it could be bought by Americans or by the Chinese even. So can this be handled, or what would be the rules? So are there any rules coming? Are there any rules there?
I'm sure there will be rules so that you can't basically, I mean, that's also happened to a few, I think went to 23andMe or so, right, in the US, that then they got bored and then yeah, so the data went with them. So I'm to be honest, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure something will come because yeah. But at this moment, I don't know what.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you, Alex, for that great presentation and the wonderful discussion we had afterwards. So we will move to our next speaker. Yes. Our next speaker is Hans Constant. He is the founder, board member of Medex Health, and currently he is the board member and CEO of FAQIR Institute. They are working in revolutionizing healthcare by ensuring that health data becomes fair, and their explanation of fair is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Today, Hans will talk about using solid PODs, a way for patients to share data, possible connections to the Flemish data space, and to the EHDS. Go ahead, Hans.
Okay, everyone, can you hear me fine? Please confirm. All good? Can't hear it, so can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And can you see my screen? I have a big screen, so I'll do it this way to share. So yeah, thanks for the invite. And already an interesting opening remarks, right? So I'm going to follow up on some of them. And also, I think last year also talked, and then also talked about Solid and the HDA. So happy to take questions and to explain you what the progress is. Now, just to give you an example, in fact, this is a screenshot that I've taken. This is a patient I helped. There's a lot of background noise for someone. Sorry, please mute. Maybe it's David.
No, that's my bad. It's okay.
Yeah, okay. So what you see is here is all the files that I downloaded for a patient that I was helping. And again, it's downloading, it is documents, it is not structured data. And I'm going to come back on that because the problem is that for a patient, and you said it rightly in the beginning, right? So Karina, you said it, we need all stakeholders on board. But who's the first stakeholder for me is the patient. We always say patient-centric, patient first, but who from all of these projects really does it, right? And so we start with Fakir, our company, with the patient first. And so from, in fact, when you're born till you die, you have all of these data sets, all of these databases, and it's not even data sets and databases, it's mostly documents, unstructured documents. How do you bring it together? Because you need to know where to find them, the F of Fakir, to access them. How can I download them? Can I download them? Interoperable, how do you bring 350 documents together in a meaningful way? Do I have to read all my blood tests, or can I see how my creatinine is evolving, or my hematocrites, or other values? It's very, very tough. So stress levels goes up, and imagine even that when people are traveling, how tough it is to get to the data. Because you see, typically when you're a healthy person, you don't have that much, and maybe you don't care that much, right? But we focus now very much on chronic diseases and also on rare diseases. And in Belgium, 10, 11 million inhabitants, there's 500,000 people with rare diseases, and 1 out of 10 has, for instance, diabetes. That's already 1.5 million, 15% of the community, right? And so don't underestimate these patients with chronic disease and rare disease. They're smart, they know what they're doing, and they're super engaged, right? And we see this because we're live. So last year it's a presentation, it's PowerPoint, but we're live. Patients are using our solution. And maybe Karina, to answer some of the questions that you got, is by going live with hemophilia, all of these patients, 100%, we don't have that much yet, right? We're not at the thousands, but all of the patients want to share the data with pharma, with Roche to get better drugs, but none of them, and really none of them want to share with the government. So the trust in government is much, much lower than it is into pharma. And this is real life, right? So we're working again with the Koning Boudewijn Stichting, which is a foundation in Belgium, who did research on the Belgian level on the trust. It was similar, but the percentage were not that high. And maybe next year we will do this research again because they want to work with us to see how can we not only make patients more literate, also more aware, but also more tech savvy to use it. But trust me, last Sunday, I was talking to a group of 50 people. It was a patient organization, so 3 physicians, all patients, and there were 24 patients, 16 patients lined up, and all of them understood what I was talking about. So don't underestimate. We think people are stupid. Well, they're not that stupid, okay? So then the problem, as I said, it's data silos. That's why Fakir interoperability is so important. You have data in your first line with your physician. Then maybe you're in hospital 1, you're in hospital 2, that's here. Maybe you have some lab tests. You have maybe some apps, diabetes, weight scales, maybe your sleep, whatever. Diabetes centers, think about glucose meters. So good luck on bringing it all together in a meaningful way. Okay, so this is all in separate data silos, and typically it's even separate documents. It's document stores. It's not even data. So in Belgium, I think we're leading in many ways, Didier, and we saw each other also some days ago on the Flemish government. And Inge will talk about the HDA. So I think the Flemish and the Belgian politician, but also like the Brussels and Walloon, there's a lot of willingness to engage with the politicians. Also, we've set up the HDA. It took us, the Health Data Agency took us 11 months to write the law and to get it launched in Parliament, voted. We have the budget for that, and now it starts to scale little by little, right? But also in Belgium, we have not a data space, but a data hub. So that means like all your vaccinations are in one place safe. It's by the Flemish government, and then you can log in and see the data. We have a system in Flanders. It's not yet in Wallonie and elsewhere, which is COSO, where in fact, if you're in the Flemish region, you log on and you have one platform where all the hospitals have to, it's not legally bound, have to publish their papers. So I can log in and I can see my papers of different hospitals. And typically in Flanders, we have like 6 different EPDs, which makes it very tough. And then you have similar things like Réseau Santé Wallon and all the stuff to bring it together. But even when I have, so Brussels, I didn't come, Didier, because I have the flu, so I don't want to infect you guys, and I had a little bit fever, sorry for that. And maybe I'll sound a little bit nasal, I might cough, but anyhow. But the point is, if I would go to Brussels and have an accident, and I get in a hospital, you know, it happened to people that I know because I live very close by, and I visit Brussels often. Well, even my last blood test, my last allergies, all of the information is in COSO Flemish, and even just 5 kilometers from here, they cannot see it. So what they do a new blood test, they do a new picture, they do a new NMR. And that's also very cost consuming, right? So these things are not working, and data can do a lot. So I talked about the first stakeholder, the patient, here on top. But there's another important stakeholder. So there's a lot of things now, and we already have a Flemish and a Walloon government. We're still working on the federal government after the elections. Shame on the politicians to be so slow and to be so narcissistic and egoistic. But anyhow, don't quote me in its record. Sorry, politicians, but I mean it. But the point here is that there's a lot of pressure on people in health. And this is like, I talked to many physicians and many patients. And in fact, what I listened to here, this is literally screenshots from a physician in the emergency room. And he said, when a patient comes in that's not known by our hospital and has a potential heart infarct, it takes me 20 minutes and sometimes 80 minutes to go in all of these systems, all of these silos, I said, read the documents to get to the data. And you know, when you book travels, when you pay a ticket, we're in a hyper connected, hyper digital, hyper fast world, but our health is kind of still in documents and slow. So this is kind of what we try to do, is to really bring this all together in a way that you don't have these screens, because this is literally the screenshot of an EPD of a physician in the ER. So imagine you have to look at all the documents this way. This is the SUM-EHR. It's in Flanders. It's a way of the first line, the physicians at home who need to fill it in. But you see, the systems are old, are not user-friendly. So I think to fill in one of these patient documents, a physician gets 40 or 60 euros, but nobody uses it. It's a waste of money. Why? User experience. It's not connected. It's not user-friendly. Here also you see kind of old lab tests, but you have to click one-on-one, read them, download them. So it's hell, sorry to say so. So also for the second stakeholder, for us, it is really tough to get all of the data. And then there's the third/fourth stakeholder, and I say researchers, and that can be academic, but also pharma. But I've worked in pharma 12 years. I founded a startup also after 12 years. So from 2000 to 2012, I worked for Eli Lilly as a data scientist, bioinformatician, but then also in clinical, bringing all data together for pharma, for making better drugs. And then I had a startup in data science, bringing it together because I found pharma was way too slow. So I founded my company on my own to do this much faster, because the problem is, if you need a registry in Belgium, on average, if you're lucky, you get it in 6 months, but typically it takes 18 months to 3 years. It costs you 500 to 1 million. So not having the data, you know, if you are going to die, you want it earlier, right? And also, what's the economic impact of not having the data? What's the economic impact that it's so costful? While strangely enough, we have the data in the hospitals, we have the data in the pharmacists, we have the data in insurances. So why can't we share it? So that's a problem. And then, of course, and I'm a huge fan of the European health data spaces, because at last there's legislation. The only thing I often say, in the US, they innovate, they create. In China, they duplicate. And in Europe, we regulate. And so we need to find a balance on not over-regulating and making things happen. As Didier, you did it in your introduction, right? Is why does translation cost 6 months or 5 months? Why does it take so long? And when it will be live in 2026, well, if you're sick and you're going to die in 3 months, well, I tell your kid, you know, we'll have a low in 2 years to help you. You see, balance things. But the cool thing is that this data space, it is happening. And a data space is in fact a virtual network with technical rules, but also ethical rules and legal rules, and then also business rules. People forget it. And we're happy in Flanders. So I really love to be in Flanders. And I'm also happy to be European, because I think we're doing the right thing. So legislation is needed, but balance it. Don't over legalize things. But the point is that in Flanders with IMEC, we have a great, IMEC is really a top research center. We work together and we have already a data space working. It's in a sandbox. And so it's pretty cool to see with all the aspects, right? So you have a broker, where is the data? Where can I find it? You have a clearinghouse. It's like the notary. This is like the bibliothèque. Where's the data? Then the notary. Yes, I stamp it. You can get access. Then you have a vocabulary. Do we talk the same language? You have an identity provider. That's kind of the police. Hans, are you Hans? Are you certified? And you have the App Store with all the applications. And then you have the data user, the questionnaire, typically a researcher. And then you have a provider. But guess what? Now we call it a lot prosumers, because I, as a patient, want to know if my drug is the right one. I want to get a better drug. I want to be in preventive care, know earlier that I get sick and not when it's too late. So we're prosumers of data. And the data is ours, it's the patient's, right? It's not in the law like that. Data ownership is tricky, right? But, you know, I want to share my data if it's done correctly. I think all the patients do. And so I'm also a tech geek. I'm very proud to, because I've written the first software of my first startup. So this is already my 6th startup. So from the introduction, I'm a tech entrepreneur, but I worked in pharma 12 years. I worked even a year and a half for the government. Guess what? But I get most fun of just being my own boss, having a great team, and being able to move fast and deliver things. So that's why I'm a tech entrepreneur. What we do now with the new company Fakir, it's about connecting the dots, but to connect the dots, to make it all very coherent, interoperable, you first need to collect the dots. And now I'm going to switch to the second part, which is solid, social link data. And this is not something I invented. I was lucky already in 2009 to have met Tim Berners-Lee several times. And we talked about it. And we're lucky because Ruben Verborg, who's a major professor, lives in Ghent, Belgium. And he's probably going to be the director of this. He already is in a certain way. But Tim Berners-Lee said the internet, it is a web of documents, right, with links. But it should be a web of data and interoperable data. And this is where Solid is. It's like not a new web, but it's an addendum to the web to move from strings to things, to really make linked data. And the cool thing is now, data is locked, right? So as I explained, data is locked. And just to explain you Solid, Solid is in fact a protocol. It's a World Wide Web Consortium protocol that's open source, open access. You can read it, you can install the app, and you can make your own pod, your personal online data store, your own little database. And you can do it on your phone, you can do it on your Google Drive, wherever. It is platform agnostic, and you can use it with Chrome browser, with Safari browser, whatever. It is really open source to be used. But now, why is it solid? It starts with social media, where you say, I put my picture on Facebook, on LinkedIn, you copy your picture, you don't know what's happening. The idea is to really make a Health Data Vault your database, and you say, I have a picture, and I share it. I give access to Facebook, I give access to LinkedIn, and I can revoke access. Now, Solid social link data, we're moving this into the health sphere, where we say you have in hospital 1 and 2 data, in app 1, 2, your watch, some registry, some other data, some lab tests. And now we say, no, we take control of our data. And it's not that I want to own the data, but we do it in a federated way. So we keep the data where it is, but we connect it. And now the patient knows and finds all the data, hopefully also knows what happens with it. If the hospital, you can say, it is my data and I give access or not to certain physicians and so on. But you get, and I heard it in the first talk, control of your data. You see where your data is, you have control of your data, which is pretty cool. So of course, there's a lot of tech, because this is kind of what it is now. It's documents. So what we do is we look at, for instance, the erythrocytes, but we don't take the erythrocytin as the Dutch name. We translate it into data with the right international codes, SNOMED, LOINC, ICD-9, you can name them, because then erythrocytin is the Dutch label of the right code. And then an Italian can read it, a Spanish, even Vietnamese can read it. So structure your data and also think about UX UI. So we have an app where you then can see all your data, and you see it's kind of, we call it the dunes, but you can then stretch it in and out. And when you're in a hospital, you have more things and then more things. And then here you're a little bit disabled, so you can show this in a nice visual. And then when you click, you get to the right documents with the right data, but everything is connecting and nicely visualized. And then you can also say, I share all my health data with my physician, but not my psychology reports. Or I share it with my wife, but then maybe after 3 years when you divorce, you can revoke access. So this personal data vault is in fact, and I'll put a link to a video into the chat. It is privacy by design. You can use it. So we use international standards so that it's not anymore a document, but it's real data that everybody can read. It's not just the Dutch, you see. And the cool thing is when you do this the right way, sometimes you have a rare cancer. Well, you can go up and down in the tree. You find much more related data and much more information, because now it is data and it's not a stupid document. Even with physicians, right? a physician is not anymore active. Who's a physician in Belgium? We have codes, RISIF codes, INAMI codes. Didier will know this, but then this changes. So it's impossible to find who's the expert for my disease, where's my diabetes coach, and so on and so on. So we link all of the data. We use OpenR, we use HL7 Fire and all of that to really make data truly interoperable. Now, that's one thing with the typical existing medical data. But guess what? How many days are you in the hospital? And how many days are you at home? There's a lot of data at home. So typically now people look into data of the medical records, the clinical records only, or maybe some health records. But guess what? We want to move beyond that and add a personal health record. So link to your personal data. So in our use case with hemophilia, and Roche having a great drug, Hemlibra, they need to prove to the Belgian government what's the value, what's the right price of the drug to get reimbursed. So they need to know the data. Well, now they have to wait for the EHRs and EMRs to give them some data. These patients sometimes show up once a year. They only know the last month. So the data is skewed. They have to wait for the data. It's a lot of consultancy in between, so it costs them a lot of data. And what we have done now for the hemophilia patients, we have set up a pot. We integrate that data, and I'll show it later how it looks like. And now Roche, with the right way to get access to anonymized and in fact pseudonymized data, they have the data always on, always available. So the cool thing I said, for us, the EHDS in Europe, and you've read it in the beginning, Didier, is the individual in control of that data, right? Give access to the data in an interoperable way. So that's one thing. And secondly, I think the solid technology, I'm happy in Flanders, we were the first region in the world where the minister president himself took the faith in this, put some money in it, and we're starting to do this. And the aim is by the end of the year, that will take maybe 2 years, that all Flemish citizens will have a pot supported by the government, and then we will start to add in data. On top of that, we're happy with Fakir. We just started. In fact, we had only 1 employee till last year, and Philippe and I, my co-founder, were only there, so it's only 3 people. We started coding in February, but we're live in June, and we have a new release in October now. And we already have a grant of 2.5 million, so that's 10 researchers in all of these companies with IMEC that are paid for the coming 2 years to do the research. Now, one step back here is, how does it work, the ecosystem? So first, you can use a Fakir pod, or you can go to Solid and install it wherever you want. It's your database, it's your pod, right? You can also take the Flemish pod, the Belgian pod, the European pod, whatever. We'll see, there will be plenty. So you have an empty, safe space. And it's GDPR by definition, because it's your data in your vault and you give access or not. So you don't have to control people anymore, because it is in the control by definition. Watch the video that I will send you to understand it. The second step is, if there's already applications, we connect it. If there's EPDs, we connect it. If there's a new application needed, we build it and we connect it. So you start to fill the pot. So step one is, I, as a patient, I have my data. I can see my data for me. It is closed only for me. Second step is, a physician has also a pod, and then you want to make your data available for your health. It's primary use of your data. And so the physician gets access, or all physicians or all hospitals can get access, and then you share your health information as you do, but you know when it's touchable because it's a federated network. And then step 3 is really sharing it with, this is secondary use, and then we make an aggregator pod, which comes with technical rules. It's like a mini data space, and in there's rules, and then the pharma can use it, but it's anonymized data, and then the patients say we contribute or we don't contribute. And it is working, right? We have proof now. And lastly, we connect, but this arrow should go there. We connect with the Flemish data space, which is sandboxed, so that it can go beyond just an aggregator pod, that it can go beyond that, and it can really be in a data space with a data catalog and all of these things on top of it. So this is very quickly, it's a huge architecture. It's a lot of work, but we already have it live. We already have patients. We already have hospitals using. We already have secondary use from pharma, and it is working, right? So we have apps for you as a patient, for a professional, and the hospitals like it. In the beginning, said, Hans, you're going to steal our data. I said, no, it's not your data. You need to share data. we're enriching your data with the data at home. So now the hospitals even want to pay us, because when a new patient comes in or an existing patient, they have the Strava connected, they have the sleep models, they don't need to ask it. So we're bringing efficiency to their system. So it's pretty cool now because it's really scaling. And of course, for me, I'm a data geek, but also I'm very much into UX, UI, user experience. So it is available on the App Store and the Google Store, but you won't be able to download it because it's still under the radar. Because I don't want to do PowerPoints. I don't want to talk. I want patients who use it, and I want to prove it, and I want to see the impact. I want to sit close to the patients and close to the physician, because then I know that it works. And so now you see that patients can monitor their bleeding every day when they have it, a quick picture that did it have pain? Is it bruised? Is it getting bigger? They manage also their treatment schemes, their medication schemes, and then they see in fact values, and they share this with the researchers and with the hospitals. And you already see that it will accelerate research as the EHDS wants to do. A second use case on diabetes, where people say, how did you move? You can do it manual. You connect it to Strava, to a Garmin watch. How many cigarettes did you smoke? We can ask a question, or you can put it in. You can connect to a weight scale, and then we have kind of these values to see kind of where are you this week and how does it relate to your health and your blood and so on. And for the pharma, secondary use and policymakers, we have dashboards that they can easily see how many people that are overweight are male, female, how old are they, and so on. It's all anonymized data, and then they can see these fantastic things. So Fakir, fair, accessible, interoperable, reusable, FAR with the quality in the center. And we've chosen Fakir as a name because we want patients to be zen on their data. It's like a Fakir sitting on the bed of nails, the ones and the zeros. But it's all about linking data. It's about bringing it all together with a knowledge graph, and I can talk about tech if needed. But it's like when people want to surf, and they want to surf and use Safari or Chrome, they don't want to understand FTTP or HTTP. Solid is like the HTTP of surfing. So we're sitting with patients. It is extremely safe. We have audits, we have reporting. It is simple, and you're back in control of your data. So we have it up and running. It is starting to scale in Belgium. We might go to new countries next year, but we first want to service like 1 million diabetes patients in Belgium and 500,000 rare diseases. That's also other use cases. And then we're going to start to scale beyond Flanders and Belgium. So there's a lot of people helping us, a lot of patients, way too many names, but you see it's the Belgian Diabetes Forum, the hemophilia movement in Belgium. And then we have IMEC, our Fakir people, and the Flemish government is also supporting us. So this is my story, and happy to take questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Hans. I have many questions, but I will not ask all questions. Yeah, maybe first a comment. I think we agree about 90, I don't know, but somewhere between 95 and 98%. So I will, of course, concentrate in the 2 to 5. But yeah, maybe a kind of a technical comment. So there are many things not working concerning sharing of health data, but I'm surprised by what you said concerning blood, because now, at least on my side, I know that when I make a test of blood, this is available, and as far as I know, there is no problem between.
But is it available in a PDF you have to download and share, or is it available in the data?
Yeah, no, it's available as a PDF. Okay, but I mean, okay, that's not. No, but I thought that we were saying it's not available.
No, it's available, but in PDFs, it's not available to say.
Okay,
here,
so
because
maybe,
I need to read. The physician still needs to read the PDFs and get the values out. That's my point.
I will go directly to this question. For me, I thought that it was now with, let's say, AI in general and with technology, kind of quite easy to transform PDF format when it is more or less organized, and like Blood, it's very well organized in something that you can use everywhere. That's my first question, but I will go further also to the second comment and then to the second question. So the comment about overregulation, there is overregulation. We totally agree. and it is totally crazy. And I don't know how many times I already gave my authorization to share my health data. I don't know how many times, but just 2 days ago, I was going to my health, and then there was this question: do you want to share the health data with the INAMI? That's our non-Belgian among us. That's an official institutions for health.
It's like the NHS, yeah.
Okay, an agency. And what does it mean? I mean, of course, I agree to share my data with the INAMI, and even if I don't agree, of course, they have already data. So it's crazy.
Yeah,
so I don't know what is that. Also, I was looking for my SUMIR, you know, that it took me months, even years to have it. And I received a message, oh, you don't have a SUMIR. I don't know why, but okay.
Because your first line physician has to fill it in. You can do it.
No, but I mean, he did it. I know he did it.
Okay. But it's all systems. That's the problem. The government is working with all systems. I worked a year for the government, sorry to say so, but it's all tech. They're even in static HTML dimes. Come on, guys.
Yeah. Okay. But now I'm going to my next point. But what I'm sure, I never gave my authorization for IQVIA, you know, to use my data. Well, I'm totally sure I never gave my informed consent, because I even didn't know about this company when it was already using my data. And I also know I never gave my informed consent for Helena Care. Okay, the same. So Helena Care is kind of my health, but in a private system. And I'm also sure, because I didn't know about Helena Care. So.
But maybe there's a lot of questions, right? So maybe I'll stop you for a minute.
So now my question was about PDF, how not to share. And my second question is, are you not afraid that if you make two, let's say, how can I say that? Okay, I will say it. If it is very clear for the citizens that they can choose between sharing and not sharing, they will share less and not more.
Well, a lot of questions. First question, AI can translate PDFs, yes. Is it easy? Yes. Technology is there. Technology is not the issue. The problem is validation. And the problem is that we're in healthcare. So if you do this in Zalando, you want to buy a shoe and you get a red shoe instead of a green shoe, nobody will sue you. You send it back and you got it. If you make one mistake using AI, one mistake in health, you might have 999,990 patients doing fine, but one is dying, you're in trouble, and for the right reasons. So the problem is in health. Yes, technology is there, but it needs to be validated. We know when you're in a startup, you need to have this MDR, your medical device, when you make decisions, and it is extremely tough. Even in the AI right now, the AI tools, I think only 1 to 2% is used because of the medical legal aspects of it. So yes, it's possible, but we're in a very tough world here, right? And this is people's lives. So be careful, and validation needs to be there. But again, it's about balance, right, Didier? Then secondly, yes, in Belgium and in Flanders, you can have your PDFs. But as I said, if you have 350 PDFs, good luck at looking at them. You even as a patient, but if you end up in an emergency room in Italy, what do you think will happen? You know it, right? So yes, so you could say fair, the fair data, findable, accessible, and it's findable. It's even accessible, but it's not really useful, right? Because I don't think an Italian emergency room, when I get there, will read a Dutch PDF from the system here. So that's why we need to structure data. Okay. And then I don't know, your last question, maybe you need to repeat it, but that were your two major questions.
No, but I will leave the.
Okay.
I'm sure I will have time for this question another time. So I hope, yes.
So I'll try to be more concise if possible.
No worries.
Yeah, how can a person create its own pod? And the thing is, why I'm interested is, well, I'm a diabetic, and actually I've studied this issue with the data because I want to like do an open source project that can predict glucose values.
Yeah.
think what I hit myself front of was the lack of data, because I have my own from my CGM for 5 years.
Yes.
Public data is kind of missing.
Mhm.
And even if I try to gather data from other people, I hit on the GDPR wonderful thing. So how can you like simplify the process to give access to a normal person who has no programming skills to create it his or
Yeah.
her own pod and like pass it forward to probably my pod? That's what.
Yeah, and I don't know your name, so maybe say your name.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm Livia Zaharia.
Lydia. Okay, I didn't. They probably don't pronounce it. But good question. And in fact, just follow me via LinkedIn. Reach out to me, and I'll explain it because I cannot do this in 1-2 minutes now, right? But let me put it. Your first question was about the spot. So a pod is a personal online. It's like your database, and it's not Oracle. It's not. So you don't have to pay, and you can install it. So literally, if you're technical, and I agree with your question, if you're technical, you can do it yourself. If you don't trust anyone, and you can do it yourself, and it is safe. Typically, you won't do it yourself, and you would trust your government, the Flemish or whatever your government is, and we can explain to your government because it's open source, so we can train them to do that. And I hope with Flanders we start that, and we can scale that, right? And you don't have to pay for it, right? So you can do this. So technically, yes, you can do it. I'm pretty sure in your neighborhood there might be some tech people. We can explain it, and they can do it in your country or your region. It is not rocket science. Take 2-3 days to a technical person, and you're good to go because it's pretty well documented. It's not yet complete, so give it 2 to 3 years for it to be really fully fledged, industry-proof, scalable. And there's some questions to that. Your second part is completely right? So the thing is, and I'll put the video in the chat after my answer here, right? But look at the video. You'll understand the concept very well. The only thing is, in Dutch, we say a kluis, which is a vault. It's closed and it's your data, which is in fact the wrong way to do it because you want to share your data. And we say it's a sluice, but it's a gateway. And we have a knowledge graph that connects all the data. And then you at least have control. But in Belgium right now, the Diabetes Liga, so the Belgium Diabetes League is picking it up. We're working with them. In fact, next week we have another meeting. And we plan to have a fully fledged system with dummy data first. So we always build it first with dummy data. So you can play patient, you can pay physician. And then we show the system and we let it benchmark. They can audit it, security, all of that, all the technical pieces with the government, with the hospitals. And then we go live, and we plan to go live in March, but this can scale it. It doesn't end at the boundary of Flanders, right? So just contact me, and I think in March, April, you maybe should get access to it. And then it's about building all of these connectors, right? Step by step.
Yeah, that exactly when I heard it, I wanted to find out because obviously it's nice that Flanders have it, but
it will scale. So the Flemish government wants to give this available to others. It's open source. So it won't be a closed system. Otherwise, I would never work with them.
Yeah, because for example, for where I come from in Romania, we use to hack our sensors with Xrip because
absolutely. I also hacked. Yeah, I did the same.
Literally,
but this is where the EHDS comes in, right? So the EHDS, you can go to your CGM software and say, give me back my data in an interoperable format, which is pretty cool, right? That the pressure is on.
That's exactly
vendor lock-in is not anymore allowed, which is cool. This is the EHDS. It's an ally. And now technically it is possible.
Yeah, so I'll contact you on LinkedIn for
perfect. Thank you.
further detail.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, so I'm Anton.
Hi, Anton.
So actually, with Semantic Web, I have like a long love-hate relationship because I used to be active contributor to some Scala RDF libraries. The thing is, what unfortunately I see is that it didn't fully took off in a way that knowledge graphs now, people build it with Neo4j and Cypher, even though SparkQL is way more sophisticated and flexible. And the thing is, the most important obviously is machine learning, how you can organize machine learning because actually Livia didn't mention it, but she did research, and actually we trained some models, and model trained on her 5 years data is actually better for non-her data than all publicly available data sets. So they're so small. And the thing is, if we want to do a machine learning project on your platform, so how would so do we have to do some SparkQL federated graph request with some federated learning, or you actually envision more, maybe not that elegant, but more mainstream ways? Because unfortunately, tooling is not that good in semantic web community.
I'll stop you. Your question is very clear. So first of all, indeed, it comes from the RDF. I also started from the very early days with Semantic Web, RDF, Top Rate, all of the tooling that we had, also contributed to some. So ultimately, yes, I was dreaming of fully federated access to SPARQL endpoints. The problem is, for the non-technical people here in the audience, SPARQL is a query language, a semantic query language, which is extremely cool, extremely powerful, but it scales badly, very badly. And that's the point you're making, right? It doesn't scale. The reason why is because the SPARQL query is so what we call verbose. You can ask a lot of questions, and then it can scale in many ways, and it just shut down the SPARQL endpoint, so the provider of the data. So Didier, I did a lot of, not the Didier, the person, sorry, I forgot your name, Anton? Anton. So Anton, we also did a lot of research. I don't want to go deep in here, but it is tough. And yes, we want to do RDF. That's why I said Solid is RDF. It is linked data, but it won't scale for 10 million or 100 million people. It scales for maybe 100 to 1,000 people. And this is what the research, I said, we have a grant of 2.5 million in Flanders, and in 2 years, we'll make it scalable, which won't be fully RDF. It probably will be a hybrid system. We're looking at a new kind of database. And by the way, the W3, the World Wide Web Consortium, W3C, will start working on a next protocol of Solid to make it scalable, because that's exactly the point. The other aspect.
Yeah, thank you very much for clearing things out. But also, there is another aspect, because if you focused on if you give access to your pod, and does it mean it assumes that I have to use federated learning, like I send a model to each person to update it and then collect it back, or you have actually some protocols in more centralized sharing when you
No, it's
give
decentralized.
consent to
It's
create,
decentralized and federated. It's not centralized. So this is also what I want to say. In the EHS, a lot of countries still use the data lake approach, which say we put all the data in one place and then we ask a question, which doesn't scale. Sorry to say so. It's hyper expensive and it doesn't scale. So this is, Anton, why we say we want to go with decentralized. So my dream is that in Europe, I don't know how many people do we have in Europe, 470 million or 440 million Europeans. My dream is that we have 440 million of these pods, everybody database, and then we can federate on top of them. And Anthony, you might say this is a technical dream, but this is what we're working on.
Sorry, I propose that you continue.
That's a technical work, but it's very important, Didier. It is decentralized. It is decentralized, and you're in control of your data.
Okay. No, Shivani, Shivani will conclude, and it will be the coffee.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, we had a lovely conversation and discussion. So we will take, I'll say, 15-minute break, and we come back.
So maybe I can ask him a question while you're
happy to take it. No worries.
Yeah,
I'm staying.
I hope Hans.
Let's do a virtual coffee drinking.
We have 25 minutes for question and answer.
I'm here. I'm here. No worries.
So
shoot.
Most of it will go to Anton, I'm sure.
Yeah, no worries. No worries.
Okay, so everyone online, please feel free to take a break, and we will be back in 15 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm still here if you want to, so just keep it open. Yep.
I just try my screen sharing whether it works. Let me just check. Then I will.
George, is that you talking? Yes.
Yes, I'm just trying screen sharing. Does it work?
Mhm. Yes, I can see the strawberry and the files.
Okay, very good. Thanks. Then I'm back in 10 minutes.
Okay. Other questions? I see Anton is still there. Yeah, sorry I couldn't be there, Anton. Otherwise, we could have had a chat there over lunch. So just shout, I'm here, I'm listening. If not, then I'll also take a break.
Let's put people inside.
Okay, so we will start again. Okay. I will just quickly let Lydia give some information for a minute, and then we will continue with the next speaker.
Yeah, just 30 seconds to tell you that, yeah, I think the discussions here are very interesting for the people who are physically here. If you have, you know, consultants, they use sometimes the concept of quick win, something that you can do, and that's quite easy to change. So if you have great ideas about quick wins, please write it on the, how do you call that? Well, on paper there. And for the people who are here online, you can write it on the chat. And now Shivani will present the next speaker.
Okay, great. So now we have Dr. George Fullen, who will talk about bioinformatics for advancing longevity. He is the full-time professor of medical bioinformatics and director of the Institute of Biostatistics and Informatics in Medicine and Aging Research in Rostock, Germany. He has worked in MIT in the US and also in universities of Belfield, Bochum, and Münster. And yes, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. I have a problem that my mouse pointer is not visible, so I don't know how to get rid of the
Normally it's working now. We see your presentation, Universitätsmedizin Rostock, and so you can go further, I think.
Yeah, let me do it this way. So I hope you can hear me now. And actually, now it's better. It is getting better. Just one moment.
We can hear you, and we see the screen.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Didier, for the invitation. I'll be talking about bioinformatics as data analysis. So bioinformatics people are in need of all those data. I will also explain it in a moment, especially for doing longevity research, finding longevity interventions. And I will also talk a bit about how to use AI for this. And first, actually, usually start my talk by pointing people to the Biomarkers of Aging Consortium. This is, of course, also about large-scale data analysis, also observational data, but of course, it would be even more important to have interventional data. And this consortium is running competitions. There are some nice papers where I had the privilege to be contributing to those papers on on defining what biomarkers of aging are, and I will come to that in a moment, and also on the validation of biomarkers of aging. And of course, you want to have large data sets to really have good biomarkers of aging and then to use them. And how are they used? So on the one hand, well, that's straightforward. You want to predict future health and survival. So if you have kind of better values in your biomarkers compared to other people, you hope for longer health and longer health and longer survival. And but they can also be very useful to predict suitable interventions. So if you can match your biomarker values to intervention data, and there the people with similar values actually benefited from a specific intervention, then maybe that is the intervention that is also benefiting you. Okay, but in the first part now, I'm thinking a bit about what is actually aging, and I will also talk about neuroscience. So, what is the meaning of this term? And a while ago, I actually was joined with a philosopher, Ludger Jansen, and he and me and other people from a EU consortium, we in the end define it in the following way: that health is a lack of dysfunction and disease, defined by the ICF and the ICD, with the International Classification of Function, Disability and Health, and the International Classification of Diseases. And then well-being, it's kind of about health and survival, and it's a weighted sum, probably weighted in a personalized manner, and aging as a process that reduces well-being. So we published that in 2019, and also for author Alan Cohen at that time was a big question. For example, having an accident, is that aging? And actually, I always said, yes, it is, because you want to be free of arbitrary thresholds. And of course, you can introduce thresholds later. You can define that framework. And actually, just last year, this is a slide from a talk of Alan Cohen at the Biomarkers of Aging Symposium.
Just technical. Actually, we don't see. We see your the first slide, but not more.
Yeah, I saw there are some technical problems still. I will stop sharing and restart it. I hope it's working.
Yeah, sometimes it's working like that.
Yeah, there is some. I don't know what's going on. So I was missing the.
Yes, no, it's okay. We can see.
And maybe now it's much better. Can you now see the slides moving?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. So those were the first slides on the Biomarkers of Aging Consortium, what I talked about, and about the role of biomarkers predicting future health and survival, predicting suitable interventions. And then I talked briefly about what is health, lack of dysfunction and disease, and well-being is a sum of health and survival, and aging as a process that reduces well-being. Okay, and yeah, and I said this is a kind of question. If you have an accident in this kind of definition framework, is that aging? And actually, if you think about it, yes, it is. And the idea here is to be free of any arbitrary thresholds, because you can introduce them later and define the framework. Many years later, actually, Alan Cohen last year at the Biomarkers of Aging Consortium, he showed this slide, where he's indeed then saying, okay, there are many mechanisms of aging, and if something happens, there are cases where hundreds or thousands of mechanisms are in a weird way involved, but they are not universal. And this is a kind of case in an accident. Whereas for specific diseases, it's more universal, fewer number of mechanisms. And then there's everything connected with what we are most interested in aging, which is also reflected, at least in part, by the hallmarks of aging. Those are pretty universal mechanisms, but there are rather few of them. So it's about understanding aging. What are the mechanisms behind it? And And then, of course, how to design interventions as a next step. And in this table, I've compiled the concepts. Just let's contemplate it for a moment. There are states and there are time periods. So it's about health, survival, well-being, and what we call ill-being, and the baseline. The time periods and a health span, lifespan, well-span, ill-span, and chronological time. And then think about the process behind this. We can also name them specifically the opposite of the well-being processes. These are the aging processes. And on the one hand, you consider in philosophical terms the continuance, and on the other hand, you consider the occurrence. And going further, there are definitions of biomarkers. What is a biomarker? And it's a pretty difficult, pretty hard to say, actually. It's a very general and generic term, like anything that can be measured, but that is an indicator or that is a characteristic. But the question is, what is that, a characteristic or an indicator? And I would propose a biomarker is just a feature of the state of an individual that allows prediction of another feature of the same individual. Not necessarily at a later time, but for a biomarker of aging, it's any feature of an individual that predicts temporary later feature of something with ill-being or well-being, and does that better than chronological age. That was this now 5-year-old definition. And biological age is then, it seems a composite biomarker that predicts future well-being in the best possible way. And then going molecular, health span pathways, or health span pathway is a set of molecular features of health that relate to each other, that belong to the same molecular setup, the same molecular pathway. And this way, I think we have a framework to think about biomarkers of aging, and we then can apply it. And yeah, I think we have got some more clarity of thought that way. So here, as a this kind of table for the last time, you saw the aging processes, and then biological age as a predictor of the future state of well-being as well as ill-being. And then we defined health operationally by stress resistance, strength and cognition. And strength and cognition goes together, but it's also two different aspects of physical function and cognitive function. So once you have a nice definition in terms of terminology, you can operationalize it. You can think whether the operationalization is actually a good one. And then you can even go through the literature. And today you could be doing that with a large language model. At that time, it was a huge exercise of checking lots of references to come up with details about this operation definition of health, and thus of aging and of biological age and so on, because as you saw, those are of course tied together. Yeah, now neuroscience, I mentioned this already, it's a kind of concept also maybe now 10 years old. And the idea is we know enough about the mechanisms of aging, the biomarkers also, and the aging mechanisms, the hallmarks of aging, and the health span pathways. And we have enough ideas for interventions that may indeed work. That's the engineering idea, in contrast to the science, that we can just now develop, engineer aging science-based interventions that do work to counter disease and dysfunction. And there are a couple of reviews, also recent reviews, about the neuroscience hypothesis, essentially saying, okay, we know enough in science and engineering that we can indeed do something, that we can try out interventions. Of course, it's an open question, and some people actually understood neuroscience entirely from the science perspective. There were some papers actually this year, David James and others, about inflated expectations in translational research on aging. And okay, they said essentially this neuroscience agenda in the middle, it's kind of the result of failure of earlier theories of aging, like very simple ones based on antioxidants, oxidative stress, and so on. But also the perceived need to do something about aging. And then in this kind of vicious cycle of investors and translation researchers, financial speculators, and unaware of recent negative findings. This kind of evolved in a, what they say, in not a favorite direction, because yeah, they thought we can do something, and we should do this translational push. We should do translation, which I also believe in. But they think, no, it's not so easy to translate. The results of the translationary approaches up to now were kind of, yeah, weak and over-optimistic and so on. And they say essentially, okay, it's much easier now, right now, to understand aging than to really engineer interventions, in contrary to what most other people say. And how to find out? Essentially, of course, yeah, by trying out interventions and understanding them. And I think both things go together. You want the science and the engineering go hand in hand. And essentially, reasoning from fight aging, yeah, he more or less stressed that the engineering is successful right now. And I would say yes, with of course a lot of caveats, but I would also say that if you criticize this neuroscience research as just engineering or science of of just tinkering with metabolism of those interventions that are not probably not giving a lot of returns, I think you are wrong. I think it's also about senolytics, also about partial reprogramming and other aspects of longevity interventions. And here I believe if you get it right, you can have quite some effects. Thus, I think it's not this baby and bathwater argument, because neuroscience, I think, at least in a wider sense, is really also engineering in many ways. It's not just about but it is about going under. It's about understanding, about really trying to have a scientific approach as much as possible. So understanding engineering, and this is now coming back to the data. This is essentially for me also a role of bioinformatics. We've got those neuroscience interventions on the left, medication, lifestyle, and so on, and we want to understand them, especially in human, and there we need to consider, of course, the context, all those confounders, and the data analysis. I think this is not getting much better, or it will soon get much better, because there's not just the classical approaches, but also lots of approaches based on using large language models and knowledge graphs, and I also hope that there are more and more good data, because this is essentially where I perceive the problem, or many problems. We need more data, and we need more good methods. This is my main slide here. I think, but if you consider almost no aging plots are actually trained on intervention data. They are trained on observational data. And so imagine in toxicity research, a liver toxicity predictor is just trained on young and old livers. It sounds almost ridiculous. And of course, the reason for not training intervention data is that there are so few intervention data. And that's now connecting to the main theme of this meeting. Yeah, we need much more data, especially human data, for training and benchmarking. And I actually found only two examples, two very recent ones, of intervention-based learning, of what I would say are really good aging plots then. That's a paper by Rajab Sehgal. It just recently came out on epigenetics data, actually. They collected 51 longevity intervention studies in human. Another paper, also very recent, by last authors Pedro de Magalhães and Alex Freitas, where they used, and they said for the first time, intervention data to learn new interventions, whether chemical compounds could be life extending or not. And I would give a bounty for other hints, because I'm really desperately looking for more examples. Maybe I'm missing all of them that are there, but I didn't find them also. I did not find them in the references of those papers either. Yes, and this point was also made by Dmitry Kirkov in this paper in Aging Cell, And they also said, okay, we must consider uncertainty. There's almost no consideration of uncertainty in this work on aging clocks and other predictors. So, and I would suggest actually to look into conformal prediction. That's a side issue, and I can explain it in the questions and answers if you like. And there's also another problem is there's almost no consideration of automated machine learning. And I believe that we must explore the AI and machine learning method space much more extensively. It's not just elastic nets or some other, okay, there are also some other deep learning methods for aging clocks, but it's mostly actually based on elastic nets. And here I'm working on this with Daniel Palmer and Anton Koulade and others. And there are far too few considerations of confounders. Like you want to use tools like Combat, differential express genes, fantastic PCA, and there are also not enough. There's not enough systematic consideration of side effects. This is important, I think, side effects, and this is I would give an example how to extract understandable linear features, actually as a first step, and then learn classifiers or other predictors. And that also takes care of the confounders to some degree, of the side effects, and of interpretability or understandability. So this is just one slide on ongoing work together with Daniel Palmer and Roberto Avila. We actually have ministry-funded academic project running that could end in the startup for intervention analytics as a business-to-business model. And here you see a contrastive PCA plot. Contrastive PCA is not very well known, but it looks like to be very appropriate to delete some confounding issues. And you see on top metformin and blueberry, those interventions are now in similarity space. It's similar to principal components, and they're very close together. And the pie charts indicate what kind of biological processes, like similar to hallmarks of aging, are actually going on if people take metformin or blueberry apple juice. And on the other hand, on the bottom of the PCA, you see partial reprogramming data, and you see that there are other processes highlighted, which actually made a lot of sense. It's DNA proliferation, stress, and such. So we believe we are developing methods now to really understand longevity interventions, combining science and engineering. Yeah, and there are a few more slides. One is that is close to my heart is longevity study designs. And I presented that at the AARD conference. And it was kind of the idea, what can large language models do to design longevity studies? And this was after some dialogue, those are some designs by AI, by generative AI, the dietary intervention study, physical activity study, and the pharmacology intervention study. They're rather boring, but that's to be expected because, of course, those large language models in their training data, they find lots of such information related to those kinds of studies. Pretty boring still, but you can nudge those models into coming up with more exciting, but of course also more risky interventions. This is a study that will probably not be easily accepted by an ethics commission because it's essentially about epigenetic modifications by some cancer-related drugs. So drugs used, for example, against cancer, which are inhibiting epigenetic enzymes. That's actually the first arm. The second arm is about mimicking the effect of reprogramming factors, which is quite similar. The third one is about epigenetic interventions and NAD precursors as a combination. If you ask a model why this combination, you actually get a good hint for a paper where NAD and reprogramming are mentioned together. But what I'm proposing is to have a leaderboard to find the ultimate longevity study designs, because it's pretty expensive to do such studies. You are not looking at large signals, so you want to design them well. We also did the same on health and productivity. So not just going for longevity interventions, but also for being productive along the day. And there actually there was some nice ideas by the large language model. For example, taking people at risk of cognitive decline, and then, for example, suggesting fish oil, or also low dose lithium, which in a very low dose is essentially pretty well substantiated. If you look at epidemiological data, the more lithium in the water, the public water supply, the better people seem to be in their health and mortality. And yeah, this is essentially the final, almost the final slide. Not sure. I think I also, yes, I'm running out of time in a moment. So this is a very recent paper on large language models and their diagnostic capacities. Essentially, in this trial, they were better than the doctors and better than the doctors who were guided by AI in some diagnostic exercise. And this is happening more and more frequently, and it's of course causing lots of ethical and other considerations in medicine. So I'm working also together with Anton Kolaga on thinking about what are good responses by models, how can one evaluate them, those validation requirements. I won't present them here because I think I presented them already in February to a similar audience. And finally, this is our agenda at the IBIMA. It's a Rostock Institute for Biostatistics and Informatics in Medicine and Aging Research. We did 3 neuroscience trials, essentially neuroscience that we looked for xenotherapeutic in animals. We did an observational human trial, and we did a nutritional strawberry study, where we actually saw some hints for apoptosis, potentially of senescent cells by a kind of radical Mediterranean diet that was at least radical on a few specific days. And there are specific projects ongoing, as I said, on health and productivity, also on AI and neuroscience, advised by large language models, and also on toxicology and neuroscience. And with that, I would like to say, stay healthy. I welcome you to Rostock, hopefully in April and October next year for events regarding Rostock Longevity Days. I apologize, I did somehow technically it didn't work all well. I'm also missing the mouse. I could not use it as a pointer, unfortunately. But I hope I was able to get most of my ideas across. And I'm thanking all the people funding my efforts and the group's efforts, and I'm thanking all team members. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, George. So I have, of course, questions, but I don't have the priority since I said priority for people who were not asking questions. I'm very surprised by a few of you not asking questions. No. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so my question is about it seems very interesting this study for people between 50 and 75 years old. How many people, and is it already really started, or will it start?
No, this health and productivity study we would like to start next year, and we're hoping to find a sponsor for that. And the other studies were just designs by large language models.
Yes. Sorry, can you wait a few seconds because the batteries are empty. Technology. Aging. Technology. Yeah, the battery are aged.
With the new mitochondria.
Oh,
I'm hearing something about mitochondria.
Hey, Georg, maybe you could repeat when the longevity days are in Rostock again.
We want to do one in April and of course in the longevity week in October. But they are not fixed yet. should inform you. I think you are still on the mailing list for the Meetup Gesundheit.
That's one, right? Oh, no, those not the ones you just took out?
Alex,
Normally, it should be.
from long days past. I put you on the mailing
Yeah.
list. So,
I think I'm on this mailing list, yeah.
yes, yes, and we will announce it that way. And I hope I also remember to let you know when it's more specific.
Okay. No, not okay. Almost okay. It's supposed to be full. It's supposed to be muted. So it's supposed to. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I'm lost now. Yeah, you were answering concerning this clinical trial, or more precisely, following people from 50 to 75, and then the mic was done.
Yeah, did you hear my response?
No.
Okay, so I understand this was a sorry, you were referring to the trial on health and productivity, and I said that we will actually. Well, what I said is we are doing it hopefully next year, but we are still looking for the funding. But we will do a small trial of 10 to 15 people, actually probably in January or February. So a small pilot trial is now planned in earnest, but a large trial, this needs a lot of funding. And we hope that health and productivity is actually an interesting topic for large companies, because it could help them recruit people and keep people, because many people are interested in both. They want to be healthy and productive in the workplace. And we actually got in good contact with two companies, but in the end, it's a very German thing. The employees' representatives, or the representatives of the local health support team at the company, they were kind of obviously vetoing it. In a way, also data protection problems were cited, and it is very typical for and reflecting what what Alexander said a while ago. It's not easy in Germany to do such trials with wearables. Well, essentially, that's what I didn't say. We want to use wearables, and then there are the data from the wearables, all those problems with privacy, and it's not easy.
Okay, thank you. David. Last question for David, and then.
George, that was a great talk.
Yeah, hello.
I really liked your emphasis on collecting data about interventions and the results of interventions, because we need to know what is the changes that we couldn't anticipate in advance until you do the interventions. So are the interventions you mentioned, are they about slowing down aging, or are they about reversing aspects of aging, actually healing some of the hallmarks of aging?
Oh, so for the two papers, I would have to check, but for example, one of those papers had rapamycin included, and that was actually then picked up by Brian Johnson when he said that he would no longer be taking rapamycin. So it was very well-known interventions, also calorie restriction, and I think hypoxia, and it was all human data, so there was nothing like partial reprogramming, where you have a chance to actually reverse aging. But all those results on a partial reprogramming and reversing aging, there's a big question mark, as a paper by Krikov et al. Explained, because when they showed that reversal of the aging clots, those are clots trained on observational data. And Krikov et al. Then talked about a domain shift and a shift in the distribution of the data, so that it's not so as clear as many people would like it to see, that we can really get rejuvenation by, for example, partial transient reprogramming in vivo in mice. And for the paper Joao Pedro and Alex Freitas, they use data mostly from the DrugAge database. And I think the DrugAge database also doesn't have any compounds that were shown to reverse aging. They are, I believe, all slowing it down.
Thanks. Just a brief comment or an advert. In my talk tomorrow, I'll be saying some of the same things, but in my own style rather than in your style. So hopefully we'll have the same message, but reached in different words. Collecting data from interventions that can actually demonstrate aging is being reversed, and in which combinations, I think is the most important thing to do of all.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. I will be there, and maybe you could say it's a nice joint interest, so we can talk about it after your talk. That would be nice. Okay.
Okay, thank you, George, for that amazing talk. We will go to our next speakers. So our next speaker is Jens de Klerk. I'm sorry if I'm saying your last name wrong. He is a PhD student and working as a data quality manager at the European Institute for Innovation through Data Science. And today he will talk about how health data quality accelerates secondary use. Over to you, Jens.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Happy to be able to present what I'm doing at the university and IHD, and I will share my screen, but I cannot share because somebody is still sharing.
Yeah.
So hopefully you are.
Yep, we can see it. Just not full screen yet. Yeah, great.
Okay, you're seeing it. Okay. So nice to meet you, everybody. So my name is Jens de Klerk. I work for IHD, the European Institute for Innovation through Health Data, long name, but shortly IHD, being run by Professor Deepak Kalra, and also working for the University of Ghent, where I'm doing my PhD on data quality specific and the secondary use of data, and aligning with data quality requirements coming from the European health data space, but also for AI implementations. First to start, and I would like to explain how data quality can accelerate secondary use. But before doing that, just some slides on what data quality is and how we define it in literature at IHD, but also at the University of Ghent. Very shortly, it's a very short definition, data quality. We define it as the degree to which the data dimensions meet requirements. So in general, everybody knows data quality as a fit for purpose principle, but if you would spell out fit for purpose, it's really about data dimensions and requirements. Now, the definition contains two important key aspects. So the first, you have the requirements. And these, it's very important to notice that these are very context specific, so very depending on the use case in hand. And these requirements will be redefined and will be different over the use cases, but also over time. So if, for example, if you go to AI training or other purposes, data from collected 1 year ago or 10 years ago will have different requirements, will have different layers of data quality. So that's something we need to take into account. And then the second word in the definition is the data dimensions. All these requirements, so if you would have requirements on completeness, if you have requirements on ranges, all these are being organized into data quality dimensions. So for example, completeness is the most known dimension. And together, all these dimensions can form a framework. So if you go to literature, if you go to the European Health Data Space, if you go to EMA, for example, every organization has its own framework containing superficial high-level framing of dimensions, so completeness, correctness, timeliness, and so on. But within these dimensions, you need to have requirements stating out how you define data quality and how you will assess data quality. So that's important to realize when we are talking about data quality in general. Now, what we are doing at the university and at IHD throughout projects, EU-funded project, but also a project in Belgium, is we are trying to define data quality coming from a top-down approach. So last year, we conducted a systematic review, and we checked all the frameworks out there when it comes to data quality, and we have found that these on the slide around 21 dimensions are being mentioned most in literature. So for example, if you look down the graphic, you will see that completeness is the most mentioned definition or most mentioned dimension and frameworks. But we also notice that every framework containing completeness is defining completeness in a different way. So when you are talking about completeness of data, in often cases, we are talking about a different definition. So for example, if you are a data holder, imagine you are a hospital collecting data from a patient, completeness will be defined differently if you are talking about data sets being reused for studies, real-world studies, for example. So then completeness will be something different. And that's something which we found in literature, sitting that we are talking about, for example, consistency. Your data needs to be consistent towards sort of format, synthetic format, or semantic format, but the definitions will be very different. So this is something very important which we noticed in literature, is that we don't have any consensus when it comes on defining data quality from a dimensional perspective. So that was a major outcome which we found. And we also tried to synthesize all these dimensions into the most common data quality dimensions. What are the most dimensions being mentioned specific for secondary use and for fostering innovation and clinical studies and so on. And we found that these 9 dimensions are most important when we are talking about data quality specific in a secondary use setting. So your data needs to be complete, your data needs to be consistent, correct, and so on, unique, stability, timeliness, and so on. So these are being seen as the most important dimensions when we are reusing data in a specific context. Now, also important because we want to go to the European health data space. We want to be compliant with requirements coming from European data spaces. And then you see the logo on the screen. It's an EU-funded project. It's called Quantum. And Quantum objective is to develop a quality label for the European health data space. So if you are a data holder, you want to submit your data into a health data access body, which will be used that data for research, the data will be labeled, will have a data quality and a data utility label. And Quantum has defined aspects which will contain the label itself. Now, all these aspects of Quantum are also being mentioned in this framework and these dimensions. So, in other words, if you have these 9 dimensions and you're assessing your data based on these 9 dimensions, you are compliant with the requirements set out of the European health data space towards the label. So that's the fun thing about these dimensions. You are compliant if you want to reuse your data for other purposes. Now, a second question you could ask yourself is, once we have defined these dimensions, once we have defined the requirements inside of the dimensions, we'll need to assess the data quality level. Now, a second aspect we found in literature and from research we are doing is that currently we don't have any consensus on how to assess data quality. And that's a major problem. Now, one of the major reasons why we don't have a structural way of assessing data quality is because we have this ambiguity in defining data quality. Completeness can be defined in 10 different ways, so it can also be assessed in 10 different ways. So that's something which we also found, is that if you have a consensus on defining data quality, the next step should be on how to assess it on a very structured methodological way. Now, that's something which we are doing at IHD. And when we are doing data quality assessments, I'm just seeing that my slides are not currently, but when we are doing data quality assessments, we are finding a lot of data quality errors. Now, for example, we are doing use cases where we found that you have data entry problems, completing data and so on. We have problems with system design and user interfaces. We have problems when data is being lost during the mapping side of it. We have also the fact that data quality is being tackled in silos. So when we are doing use cases, when we are tackling data quality, it's always one department or one person in a hospital that's responsible for data quality. It's not in a generic or in general way. Or data quality is not seen as a responsibility of a person or for a dedicated person, or we just facing a lack of awareness or education on data quality. So all these things are problems, are errors which we are facing or encountering when we are assessing data quality. Now, we're also trying to based on these results, we are trying to develop ways of improving data quality, on fixing data quality at the source. So it can be through data collection processes, establishing data quality dictionaries, software requirements, establishing a data culture inside of a data holder, dedicated stakeholders who are responsible for maintaining or for obtaining high level of data quality. But in general, what I'm trying to mention here and try to summarize is that when you are tackling data quality and when you want to foster secondary use of data, you need to have a clear leadership, you need to have a clear data strategy inside of your organization or a data quality strategy inside of your organization. And that's a major topic which we are finding in our use cases, which we are finding in EU-funded projects, is that if you want to foster secondary use, if you want to go to a data space, if you want to have a real-world evidence, real-world studies, your data coming from the source, you need to have a clear strategy on how you will obtain, how you will collect your data, how you will manage your data, how will you map your data, do your ETL process, and so on. Because in every step of the process, you could have data quality problems, data quality issues, which will have an effect on your studies and a secondary perspective. Therefore, we try to manage data quality from its total life cycle point of view. So if you have your primary source, let's say data in a hospital, if you have your data transformation, your ETL process, for example, and then you have your secondary source where you will try to use the data for a study, for example. Now, throughout the whole process, you need to have a clear data quality strategy. You need to have a management plan. Now, you will see on the slide that we try to identify several steps into this plan. So, in the first step, you have your purpose and scope of your secondary use case, for example. This will be defined by data quality requirements. So, for example, therefore, I need to have data which is being collected in a certain time span, needs to contain this kind of variables with these ranges, and so on. And then the next step, you will start to plan. How will you conduct the assessment? Who will conduct the assessment? When will the assessment be in conduct? And of course, what will you do if you find certain aspects, certain data quality errors? How will you curate? How will you enrich your data? And so on. And in all these steps, you need to tackle data quality, also other aspects, of course. I heard the word GDPR mentioned in the previous talks of GDPR compliance. You need to have software compliancy and so on. But you need to tackle in each of these aspects data quality as well. And throughout this cycle, the goal is to obtain a high level of transparency, a high level of trustworthiness, so you can trust your data in the end, so you can use it in a secondary setting, and your fit for purpose question can be answered. So that's a quite important item, and it starts with the source. It starts with the primary source. So there you need to have that clear strategy and take it along every step in the life cycle. Now, this is coming from research, this is coming from projects, and throughout the last couple of months, I'm trying to explain data quality and data quality strategy to foster innovation, to foster secondary use by using Lego. I have children, and they like to play with Lego, but when they play with Lego, it's a mess. All the blocks are scattered throughout our living room. It's a mess. They play a lot with Lego, but sometimes I get the questions from them, please help me build that small blue car I have somewhere here in this pile of Legos. That's a major problem because they don't have a strategy. The yellow blocks are not with the yellow blocks, the blue blocks are not with the blue blocks, so they don't have a clear strategy on how to tackle their Lego item. So compare it with data. If you are using data coming from a hospital and it's not clear how the data is being managed, how the data is being curated, how the data is being stored, it's very difficult to use it in a secondary perspective and to have reliable results coming from real-world studies, real-world evidence. So it's like Lego, you need to have a clear strategy, you need to document it, and you need to be transparent about it on how you tackled it. I can present a lot of examples. I could show you in real world setting how this strategy could look like, but I would like to show you how it couldn't look like, what the bad example is. And therefore, I'm using a study which we've done in a project called Connect for Children. And it's a EU-funded project for which we gathered data for neurofibromatosis, which is a rare disease occurring with children, mainly with children. And therefore, across Europe, we found sites, or we identified sites who are specialized in neurofibromatosis. And we tried to collect all the data relevant for the disease, for the pathology, and trying to combine it, doing real-world studies on top of that data. So the first question was, okay, we need to define variables defining that pathology and trying to find out where this data is being collected and how is it collected. So the question was very simple. We identified moreover 100 variables. And the question was to every site, are you collecting these variables? And if you are collecting them, how are you collecting them? So through paper charts, is it free text, is it structured, and so on. Now, this is the answer we got. So on the on the y-axis, you are seeing some of the variables, not all of them. On the x-axis, you are seeing the countries with their EPD system. So for example, Belgium is using Primux, or another country is using Cerner, and so on, or they have an in-house EHR system. But these are the answers we got for these variables. So you see, I hoped in a naive dream, I hope to have one dark green box showing that, yes, we are collecting these variables, but it's all structured and in a coded format. But we got this showing that in a lot of cases, it was in free text. Some cases, it was in paper charts. And in a lot of cases, they were not collecting the data, or they didn't know. No answer indicated also, we have no idea if we are collecting this. Having discussions with all these sites, it came clear that they don't have a clear strategy on how they manage their data and how they manage on a quality level. So that was a main outcome of the study, and also impacting our results for doing real-world studies for neurofibromatosis. It was a major impact, and it really was a mess on bringing that data together and doing the study on top of it. So in other words, to conclude, if you want to foster innovation, if you want to do real-world studies, if you want to have data for secondary perspective, accordingly what is being mentioned now in the European health data space, the data coming from data holders, you need to have a real high level of data quality, and therefore you need to have an organizational strategy on how you will manage your data, specific on a data quality level, and how you will foster it, how you will govern it throughout the organization. And that's something which is lacking currently, or is not being tackled well enough, but it's very important to have that in order if you want to accelerate real-world studies, for example. Now, it was a very short presentation. Thanks a lot. And if you want to learn more about what we are doing, and if I may just show you what we are doing in March, the 19th and 20th March, we are hosting in Brussels a summit on data and data quality and how you could manage it from the sources, from data holders, until you are doing secondary studies with your data. So it's about managing your data from collection to application, and then ensuring that you can excellence and secondary use of that data. So happy to invite you all to this summit next year in Brussels. And please, if there are any further questions, happy to address them or to answer them. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Jens. Yeah, for this conference, I saw already two people I met not so long ago.
Okay.
Great intervention, and I hope that there will be questions. Yes, David, and those who were not asking questions yet, don't hesitate. And after I have one, of course. I know David, then George, then me.
Okay.
Jens, thanks very much for your talk. You gave lots of principles about how we should models, the ones that are often used as part of health systems. It seems that...
Excuse me, my internet was a little bit laggy. Can you please repeat the question? Sorry.
So many of the data systems that are used for training large language models that are widely used, they're totally opaque. The companies behind them give no information about the data whatsoever.
Yeah.
They say what's in them. They don't say how it's been cleaned.
Mm-hmm.
They don't say much about how they're being tuned. So are you campaigning for these systems not to be used inside healthcare, or are you campaigning for these companies to be more transparent?
That's a very good. It's a very good question. Well, I don't have a straightforward answer to that, but what I can mention is that currently, when technologies companies are creating tools based on AI, for example, which can be medically approved, the requirements for data on a data quality level are not sufficient enough. So I think it's not a matter of do we include them or not. It's a matter of helping them finding the right answers on the data quality questions and being transparent about them. I can refer to you on a project. It's called AssessDHT. And AssessDHT, the objective is to create a requirement set for data quality for digital health technology bodies in order to help them finding these answers on data quality and being transparent about them. So AssessDHT is, in fact, an answer to the question you raised. It's a very important question. And we should allow them in the system, but it needs to be transparent where they are getting their data from. And it should indicate also that the data they are getting also needs to be quality approved in a way. So again, the sources which they are using the data from need to be transparent on how they are enriching their data and how they are managing their data. And to another extent, I think ISO developed a standard this year, 5,295 or something like that, about data quality NAI specific for technology. So this is something which we need to tackle, and this needs to be raised because it's indeed it's a major problem currently.
Josh, you have a question?
Yeah, it's very, very interesting talk. And I'm actually, I've been at a meeting just a week ago with people in Greifswald. Greifswald is a university next to us. They have lots of ship study. And there are people, there's an entire team of, I think 10 people working on data quality for the ship study. And they believe they are very much leading in data quality for epidemiological studies.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually also have similar problems as you have with, especially also with all this missing standardization of
Yep.
the. My question is actually, has anybody come up with an ontology? Is an ontology of quality a useful one? Because it could be an ontology, but it could not be useful, because this would help you then to sort out all those definitions.
Yeah.
Having a framework. In a similar way, like I explained for defining health, that you have a good framework for data quality.
Yeah, there are literature is discussing, I think for the last 30 years, we found a couple of papers which are basing their framework on an ontology or creating an ontology for data quality. And it's being tackled as some projects, but for some extent, for some reasons, it's not being adopted well, because it's so use specific, it's so depending on the needs, and because it's really a process. We are seeing now that data quality it has a very technical layer, of course, an assessment layer and a statistical layer, which can be translated into an ontology, but it's also very human. It has a human layer, and it's also about process change and change management in a hospital, for example, which cannot be translated into an ontology then. So yeah, you can have an ontology on it, but we are seeing that it's not sufficient, and it's not reaching enough then to tackle the problem itself. And it's more about transparency. It's more about, I'd like to compare it to the fact that I don't mind anymore that I have a data set which has 50% incompleteness. That's not my problem anymore. I want to know why you have incompleteness. I want to know what type of incompleteness you have. Do you check if you have certain biases in that incompleteness? That's more important than having a clear definition on completeness and having a clear way of defining your framework. It's more about that. And I think that's the reason why the ontologies are not successful enough in the data quality area. I don't know if that's answering your question, but that's what we are seeing currently. I know I don't mind how you call completeness. Maybe you call it capturing or covering, how you define it. It's just being transparent about it. mentioning your definition, mentioning how you assess it, and then analyzing those results. Why are you facing those results? So for example, the example I show you with the heat map, a lot of hospitals says, yeah, but we know we are collecting these variables, but I have no idea where they are. And that's more important than just having the number on or just having a framework, or that's the core of data quality, I think, and that's cannot be translated into ontologies.
Yeah, maybe it can be by using a large language model, because you essentially want to have an ontology very closely connected to real life.
Mm-hmm.
If you could feed enough real life considerations into such into the idea of you then using a large language model to construct an ontology on that basis, maybe it is helpful, maybe not.
Yeah, maybe. It's definitely
yes.
a possibility. Yeah.
Okay, just it was frozen for a few seconds. I propose that Jens, you answer, but also with the question, repeating the question fast, and then the last question. I had one question, but it will be for later or for another. And the last question will be for Anton then. So, but short answer to the question, the last thing that was that George said.
Yeah, I agree. Large language models could be an opportunity, of course, and it can be. I agree with the question and the comment. So yeah, no further adding. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, some of the things that were raised, for example, why most of companies that train large language models, they don't really give all the sources. It's just reality that when you pre-train something, you need like so much huge amounts of data that it's impossible, almost impossible to like say what went from where. And also you don't really need good data. You need a lot of data.
Yeah.
And the issue is that whatever model you train, you actually train on top of something existing model. And we already have issue that some of, for example, Facebook, they decided not to enable from their API Llama 3.2 vision because they are scared about European regulations. I understand that I like transparency. I open sourced my genome, for example. But the thing that is when you suggest to regulate things more, usually they quite often you get non-technical people who just write idiotic stuff like click all the cookies that you accepted. And don't you think that in some cases, if implemented wrong, you can actually make European Union into a third world country where people will have to go out to more developed United States or Africa or China to actually have some machine learning based procedures because regulation cannot actually allow to use advanced models?
Yeah. Thanks for the question. I agree, but let me answer it with what we are doing now and research. So we are being asked to develop a checklist for data quality for digital health technologies using AI to be transparent about them. So we went to legislation. There's a lot of legislation, of course, out there, but we searched for the data quality aspects, and I found around 8 requirements for data quality, and from those 8, 4 were dealing on or 3 were dealing on completeness. So no, we don't need over legislation. We don't need to burden companies with more cross checks and legislation, but we need a little bit more on data quality, and we cannot do everything, of course, and we cannot have an in-depth requirement on being transparent about the sources and so on. But we can have a little bit more requirements set out to make sure that the data we are using is of a certain quality. Again, not burdening. We need to make sure that we are balancing enough and not burden digital health technology bodies and people creating AI models and so on. So definitely not. But I think we need a little bit more on the data quality to be sure. To assure transparency, to assure explainability, and so on. Just as an example, is that they are asking as a requirement: is your data set complete? And I think that's a very relevant question. The question should be, if you have missing data, what type of missing data do you have? Just document it. Because we know for a fact on a data quality level that the older you get, the more missing data you have in your record. So assuming that you are using data, you will have a bias on age, for example. So the question should be, did you do an assessment? Yes. Okay. What were the results? Point. Not more. That would be already an advancement. So, but again, I totally agree. We need to balance it and make sure it's not a burden and that everybody is fostering about it. And again, if you are using data coming from a certain data source as a company using a large language model, it's also a responsibility of the data holder to be transparent. The burden cannot be only on the companies and on the industry. I totally agree on that. So I hope it answers the questions a bit and that we can agree on the fact that we need high quality data.
Okay. Thank you. There you go.
No, I'm using your.
What do you need?
I need your Zoom.
Zoom.
Yes.
Because I.
Okay, thank you, Jens.
Thank you.
So we have the last but definitely not the least speaker of the day. First of all, thank you, Inge, for accepting our invite at such a short notice.
No problem.
Today, Inge Frankie is our last speaker, and she will talk about the Belgian Health Data Authority approach in Belgium, working at EU level. She got her PhD from KU Leuven, worked as a researcher at Sciences, and currently she's working as a EU case manager at the Belgian Health Data Agency.
I have to find few seconds to find a good file. Just and then sharing the screen. Currently, no sharing the screen. Where is the good one? Oh, this one should be. Okay. Yes, and yeah. Oh no. Why is not? Oh yes. Should no, it's to them. Let me because it will be too complicated. Partager. I'm used to work with two screens. Diaporama. I think it's okay now. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me and for having us. And I would like also to thank Jens for his interesting presentation just before, because it kind of opens the floor to the Health Data Agency work. It's very valuable work on secondary use. So it's nice that we can continue a little bit on secondary use. So just to start with, because we're a very new agency and many people don't know us yet. And just to say why we were creating. So it's many things that were already mentioned today, I think, the European context, which on digital health and health data, it started already much earlier than this, but the first really written text on the Commission, which laid down the floor, opened the floor for the EHDS regulation, was the publication of the Europe Fit for Digital Age as a priority for the Commission. That initiated a lot in 2019, right after the GDPR. Then the EU's digital strategy provided the establishment of the EHDS. And we hope now that the EHDS will soon be assigned and actually earlier today, we still had a meeting with the commission and they said they really, the lawyer and linguistic reading is really nearly finished now, and they will publish in hopefully February 2025. So from that onwards, we will have 2, 4, or 6 years of implementing, depending whether it's primary use, secondary use, and on the specific implementing acts. So ready for that, I think. And of course, there were many other issues, the EU Governments Act and the EU Recovery and Resilience Facility. I think many efforts have been done. It's a lot of work. It's many countries joining all these initiatives. And where are we now? As I mentioned, we hope soon to be in February 2025, so we can finally really start off with using the European Health Data Space. So the Belgian context of that, there's a lot of healthcare data, as it is the same in whole Europe. It's fragmented, it's scattered across organizations and systems. And if I can also refer to the presentation of Jens right before, we also know that the quality is not always the best. And there's a lot of work to be done to integrate all this data at the federal level and to enable secondary use, because that's actually what the EHDS wants to do, aims to do, is to bridge the gap between primary and secondary use, which enables better healthcare. So, context behind the creation of the HDA. We were actually established by law in 2023. So that's why I started saying that we were a very young agency. We're actually growing very fast. We started with 2 people, then 3 people, and now we're soon being 10. We have a group of, the whole project was initiated by a group of 20 consultants, and we're slowly transferring to an established agency. So, so if you see, I cannot see the other ones. Our functions are of course, the HDA is actually created to monitor and to facilitate secondary use in Belgium. But of course, as already clearly said, secondary use is only possible when primary use is really on track. And the HDA tries to bridge that gap as well, somehow, but we also try to bridge the gap between the different federated entities in Belgium to solve the problem of scattered data at different levels within the different agencies at the different levels. So that's why we are. What do we do then actually? Because I've been saying quite a lot on data, and why are we such a young, but with a very agency, but with a difficult task. The HDA aims to facilitate the availability and access to data for secondary use. We aim to support the development and implementation of a policy strategy on secondary use. And in that way, we directly and indirectly want to stimulate innovation and research in Belgium. Yeah, in that sense, to stimulate a data-driven healthcare in Belgium. So in the European context, so I jump from our agency to Belgium to European context quickly. Of course, we are.
Let's get rid of that.
Yeah, I don't know how to.
I don't know how to close it.
I don't know.
Doesn't it work? It does. But it's not. If you know how. Which one is? Well, I don't speak French.
No.
One of these should make this one here.
Désactiver l'invitation pour les autres masqués. Ah.
Okay, perfect. Much better. Thank you for that. That's really great. So, actually, with all that being said, that's why the HDA is also appointed as a coordinating agency to implement the European health data space in Belgium. It's our core business at the moment. It's what we are created for, and it's what we are now trying to do. So effective use of health data, that's the main aim of the EHDS. Primary use is mostly done at a different level, but what we try to do is to function as a health data access body, which we will be. We will implement the strategies for purposes for use and forbidden use. There, as you know, there's a limit to the use of secondary data. It's not because we want to open up and have data availability that everything should be allowed. Clearly not. And we will stimulate the use of data permits, secure processing environments, and no identification. So we have a government structure. We will ensure quality of data, infrastructure, and the capacity building together in the EHDS. So how will we do that? And now this is blocked.
Oh, no. Put the mouse back in the middle.
Okay.
It should be here, no? No? Huh? That's strange.
Oh, there it is. So okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So to come back on the HDS, so what is the aim and what will be the HDA be doing there? So the idea is that every person, because this is a try to have a visual on the HDS. So everybody will be able to request data. Even private persons will be able to request health data. There will be a request being done using of every data user will go to an HDAP. It's not decided whether the health data agency will be the single HDAP or one of several. We will anyway be the coordinating HDAP. What will the HDAP do? We will have we will ensure that we can tell you whether the data is available or not. We will support you in finding the data by our catalog, and we will provide the metadata of the data that is available, so you can search for the data. And of course, we will, when the application is done, we will, in collaboration with the data holders, decide whether or not a data access application can be granted, which is then a permit. So it's an independent organization that will now decide whether or not data can be released to a data user, of course, in collaboration with data holders. But that's the core business actually of an HDAP. Of course, together with that, we will discuss the fees that will be needed for that. As you know, health data will not be just available just like that. We want to support also all the data holders. So a fee will be decided together between the data holder and the data and the health data agency, and it will combine both a fee that is asked by the data holder as a small fee for the health data access body, who will be the intermediary person there. Okay, imagine the access is granted. We will not just transfer the data anymore. The HDS obviously and clearly mentions that data should just not be transferred like that, especially when it's on health data, pseudonymized personal data. At anonymized or aggregated level, it's a bit different, but all personal health data that is not anonymized but pseudonymized will be done in a secure processing environment, which means that the health data access body will provide a secure environment. The data holder will push its data into the secure processing environment. The data user will be granted access for certain analysis for a certain period. When this analysis is done, all entry access will be closed. The data will be removed from the secure processing environment and case closed, unless we will ask the results to be published and to be publicly available. Okay, so that's something really new, because now there's a lot of different transfers of data in different ways, different people trying to link in different ways. So that's a big step forward. I think that is initiated by the EHDS, and where the Health Data Access Body will have a very central role. Just to state, we're not there yet. As I mentioned, we will be, the EHDS will be signed and published hopefully February, but there's still a lot of technical work being done. We're not there yet, but we still have 2, 4, or 6 years, depending on what, to implement. And in the meantime, there's a lot of research projects going on where also the HDA is involved, like the EHDS Health Data at EU pilot project, which is just being, which will close now at the end of the year, which was actually the basic project that published recommendations and is preparing the future work for TEDAS 2, which is a very, very big project with all many of the member states. A joint action program, which is actually preparing the implementing acts. So you don't have only the EHDS, but you have the implementing acts that are joined to the EHDS. What is an implementing act? It will really explicitly explain how things will need to be done. The EHDS is a regulation. The implementing acts will explain and regulate how this will need to be done. There will be implementing acts, €1,500 for that small bit of data. There will be regulations on that. There will be regulations on the secure processing environment. Not secure processing environments will not just be opened like that. There will be security regulation, technical requirements and regulations before they can be used. And that's all examples of regulations, implementing acts that will come out of TEDAS 2. So that's why TEDAS 2 is a very important a project right now in the implementation of the EHDS. And that's why from the Health Data Agency, together with our colleagues from Cienzano, who have a big front runners role in TEDAS 2, we follow up closely so that we can implement timely to be ready for it. Then, as already explained by Jens, the Quantum project is a very big project, because we don't only talk about just making data available, but the data needs to be of sufficient quality, and it needs to be transparent for data users what the quality of the data is. Because as a data user, you just don't want to order and pay for data for which you don't know, is the data quality high enough to work with to answer your question, your research question or your policy question. And then a new project that is starting in January, where the HDA is also involved together with our colleagues from Cienzano, is the SHAPE-IT project. The SHAPE-IT project will actually support the synergetic implementation of the AI regulation and the EHDS regulation. It's a project that will work on, for example, synthetic data and how it can be used in data modeling and things like that. So how can we use AI in maybe sometimes even avoiding to release all data, because we can model data. But that's a project that will start in January. Actually, everything is signed. We will start off in January, but the HDA is very much involved in that project as well. Timeline, as I already said, from the moment that the EHDS is published, and that's expected now, it's a little bit postponed to the beginning of 2025, but now, and it's not the first time that it's postponed, I agree. But I think I noticed itself that the Commission is really, really getting a bit impatient themselves. They really want to get off, but we shouldn't underestimate the work that has been done and the impact it will have on data sharing and on data access. And of course, there's so many member states in Europe participating in the EHDS regulations that we cannot expect people to be ready in 1 year or another. It takes time. It's not only, of course, the legal aspect. The legal aspects need to be translated in a national law, some of them anyway. Some are very clear. This is EU regulations, but there's also in the HDS many referrals to national laws that needs to be implemented as well. Technical requirements. I talked about secure processing environment, but there's also the connection with the EU central services to be done. There's also data holders to be ready to push their data into secure processing environment. They have to provide the data quality label. So data holders need to be trained in providing the data quality label. So I know it's slow, but it's a big thing. It's a big change in Europe. It's a lot of work to do. And all member states are very motivated to work towards this, and it's a joint action. But we will get there. So just to come back from Europe in Belgium, so I explained the concept why the HDA was created, what we are doing at European level, but how are we working ourselves? I'll quickly jump to it because I think I'm getting a bit out of time. The HDA is not a standalone agency. We've been created by our founding fathers. I'm not allowed to talk about founding fathers anymore, but founding parents. So there's there's the KCE, there's Genzano, there's the FOD who created us, of course, as an independent agency, and they are still part of the governance board. So everything that is our strategic body. So
Just a translation, FOD is Federal Public Service and it's ministry in Belgium.
Yeah, indeed. So they are all part of our governance board, our strategic body. So the HDA in that sense is initiated by them, but they take part of the strategic decisions at management level. That will not mean, because some people already raised concerns like what does it mean with delivery of data permits, etc. Of course, they don't interfere at case level. Below the governance board, we have our user board, which is a very big board, advisory board, and it assists us in the governance of and in fulfilling our missions, because it's a lot of work. We are a new agency, we have to set up. We'll have a big task in leading the whole EHDS implementation. So that's why we have a user board, which is in different working groups. So we ask advice for different participating bodies. Also, for example, from different hospital directors are in it. Pharma.be is in different user boards. So they all support us in giving their idea on getting there together. We work together on the data request procedure. We work together on the international context. We work together on the HDA Academy, which we have on the secure processing environment and on our national connection with the central services. I won't go in detail because I'm getting a bit in time in our technical goals, but know that our task will go from supporting data holders in making their data fair to data access, data maturity, transparency. All our procedures will need to be transparent. All data requests will have to be registered, even if a data permit is not delivered. It should be transparent. Who asked the data? Where did he ask it for? Why did it ask for? And why was it refused? And HDAP, of course, we will be the coordinating health data access body. We'll have a political role, of course. We will support policy making of secondary use in Belgium and, of course, our management. I will not go into detail on our management plan now because I think it's not the idea for now. Verification. It's an ugly word, actually, I think, but the fairness of data lies on the basic. What do we do, actually? So we have our metadata catalog, which means that data from the HDS, data holders will be obliged to be opened on which data they have. Yeah, it should be transparent where data can be found. So they will have to push their metadata the metadata is a description of data. So it's not the data itself, the description of the data. What is in the data, what is the quality will be part of that, will be all to be found in our metadata quality data. So in that sense, it will be easier for everyone to find data, to know what the type of data is. So when you have a specific request, you can go to our metadata quality, you can browse in it, you can search, where can I find this data? It's documented, it's an inventory, and you can search. And of course, our metadata a catalog at Belgium level, because we will have a national one, will be connected to the central services. So every metadata record at Belgium level will be pushed to European level. So at the moment in the metadata quality, you can find it. I will give you the link later. We have data from Cinzano, from FAG, from the federal agencies, and from RESIF in it already. We will standardize a request procedure. As said, data will be requested over us. And there will be a different, as I mentioned, between a data access application for personalized and pseudonymized data at individual level. That will be a data access application, and we will also have a data request procedure, which is different, which is for anonymized or aggregated data. So two procedures at different levels. And we will be very transparent, as I mentioned. We will have, at the moment that is not available yet, but we will produce also a web page in which you can find how many requests were handled by the HDA, where have they been granted, what was the time between the data access application and the actual release of the data, etc. When can we expect the reports? Will all be to be found on our dashboard. Secure processing, as I mentioned, the data will not be transferred. Also, the HDA will not, the data will not be transferred to us. We will not manage data. That's actually the role of the Health Data Agency, is to facilitate the transfer of data into a secure process environment. We will not have access ourselves to the data in the secure processing environment, but the links will be granted for data users. We will organize and support and facilitate that so that it's done in a safe and secure environment that we provide. It will be managed by us. So a room will be created for some persons doing an analysis. We will follow up. There will be a monitoring tool in it so that they don't do many other analysis than they have requested for. Data will not be able to, you will not be able to copy data from the secure processing environment. You will not be able as such to transfer access to someone else. It's a personal access. So that will all be managed by the Health Data Agency as a central structure. Cross-border gateways, as you will see, there will be our metadata catalog, which will be linked to at EU level. The data applications will also be transferred at EU level. So also at EU level, we will be obliged to report how our requests are being monitored and how many applications were granted. So that's also all being transferred via a national connector. The secure processing environment, because in case there's a data request coming at EU level, the data will be transferred to a secure processing environment at EU level, so that data coming from different countries will be laid at European level. And that's also a connection that will be done over the Health Data Agency in Belgium. So you see one national connector via the HDA going upwards to the central services. And in the future, there will also be interconnections between different countries, but that's more future. We have an academy in which we have trainings. We foresee trainings for people on how can we make our data fair. There's a training on the EHDS as such. There's training on the Health DCAT standards, because data will be, that's something I didn't mention yet. Our catalog will be standardized using the Health DCAT language. It's maybe for some of you very technical, but it's a standard that will be used to describe the metadata. And of course, there will be a training also in the HDA Academy on how to apply the Health DCAT standards, how to use the editor and things like that. So how can a data holder make sure that his data, metadata, is in the appropriate conditions, and using the exact vocabulary will be also done in there. So you can have a look. There's many trainings already available. We currently working very hard on restructuring our academy. We have a new HDA Academy manager who started 2 weeks ago. So we're very happy to have her. We're expanding our academy as well. So look at the e-learning. We have a communications officer that started yet, because of course we know that communication about EHDS and how it will be done in Belgium and in Europe is very complicated. We want to be very transparent to citizens, of course, and we assure them that actually we all do it together in the benefit for everyone, and we don't do it just to have data being free just like that. But that's a very difficult communication, which will take time. We are currently thinking and discussing on how to bring that to people, how to explain about opting out, and the possibilities of opting out, of course. I will not go into detail about that now, but we know that it is a very difficult discussion that we need to handle with care and explain very clearly. So if you want to see more about us, go to our website. And this is our contacts as well. So here I will give you the link again to our website if you want to have a look. I know I was very quick and maybe sometimes a bit chaotic because I wanted to maybe sometimes to move too fast, but that's where we are at the moment, what our goals are and where we are working at.
Yeah, for me at least it was clear. So we have time, I think, because we have a general discussion. We have time only for one question, and then we have a discussion with the speakers who are still here. And so I don't hear any question. Oh, yes, Anton. Oh, I didn't know this. Sorry, seriously. Okay, so Anton.
Well, the thing actually, what my major concerns is actually agency of citizens to control and share their own data the way they want. Because we had this wonderful initiative with Solid that was mentioned that you are as a citizen, you want, you decide, not somebody tells you how to deal with your data, but you make decisions. And if you want to open source it or share it for something, you don't ask some centralized body. And there are also other technologies and initiatives that actually allow decentralized, for example, ZK machine learning and federated learning that actually allow to make safe machine learning in a decentralized way. So my question is, actually, in terms of your regulations, are you, do we people who like try to make decentralized projects, are we actually under your regulations, or we should sigh in relief that you will regulate other organizations?
I don't exactly understand your question. I mean, the EHDS is for all people, so not specifically for anyone. It talks about data, not about people. So
no, I mean that do I have to like if we do some decentralized project, will you push me to put it to centralized repository, or it's more about data sets that are managed by state and are not connected with like private initiatives to exchange health data?
The EHDS talks about all secondary use of health data in any way. So in that sense, it doesn't make as such exceptions. It has a description of the different types of data that are considered as health data, and is a very extensive, and TEDx2 is working on these different health categories, but all secondary use of data will fall under the EHDS regulations.
Well, for example, I mean, in my case, I want to understand because it sounded, if it got implemented wrong, it sounded, you know, like Fahrenheit 451 book. Because if, for example, in my case, I open sourced a big part of my health data, does it mean that as a data open source, I can have, if it will, obviously I don't live in your country, but assuming if I lived here, will I have troubles that I openly share my genome, my glucose on GitHub, on Hugging Face, or it's actually my right to keep things shared the way I want?
Yes, of course, the HDS regulates the use of the health data, but it's still, and it will use an opt-out, So it's up to you to decide where your limitations are in sharing, and that system will be organized in all EU countries, actually. So if you want to have your data open source, that's up to you. The use of that open source data, that's a different issue, because you release your data, but not just, it doesn't mean that everybody can just use it
like Creative
that.
Commons. So if I say just please run MIT license Creative Commons, like please run machine learning models on my data, is it, can you forbid me to do it?
Or better said, they said data providers. Data providers in this case can be a person or can be an institution. If data providers have rights and like penalties, do those penalties apply to you as an individual if you open source your data?
And if you just say, please train
no.
on my data.
The penalties are not made on personal level, but on the wrong use of your data. If someone uses personal data in a way that is not according to the EHDS regulations, for example, if someone starts to process your genomic data together with other data in a not secure processing environment, even
but if I want to
there's
let it non-secure, what should I do? If I say I allow it not to make it non-secure, is it allowed? For example, I don't care if it's secure or not. Can I allow people to use it in a non-secure way?
I propose, I think it's a good question, and but I propose to stop here, but to continue, or maybe to continue this in the general discussion. But I can understand this question. If I want as a citizen share things, are you sure that there are no legal problems? I'm not so sure, but okay, that's maybe okay. Shivani, maybe,
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much for your talk. Just we have not so much time left, so and also not so many speakers still in the chat, but yes, so we have Alex, Hans, and George. So now I kind of want to give the floor to you. If you guys have any question for us or for other speakers, please feel free to do so.
Stop sharing the screen.
Yeah, of course. Well, okay. Yes, so if you guys have any question, please feel free. And okay, we have a question here. Yeah, it's open.
My question is probably for Inga. Ours may have a view too. Maybe it's a dangerous question, I don't know. Assuming the system works well within the EU, will you be able to also exchange data with countries outside the EU who might be sufficiently interested? I don't know, Switzerland or Britain or Canada?
The EHDS indeed has a part of connection with third-party countries, they call it. So it will depend on the type of country, the agreements that will be done, but there's a possibility of data to be shared with third countries on the specific conditions that are in the EHDS. So there's a possibility, not the obligations, and it's all, if that is accepted, it will be following the
the same EHDS regulations as foreseen. It will probably be data processing at EU level then, when it's probably a third country accesses over the EU, so that will be done at EU level then, but there's specific regulations for that. So
yeah, thank you. Yes.
I think this question will also referring there. So I saw that there will be fees that will be related to secondary use of the data. I think to a large extent, the use of this data will depend on the fees. And so are we talking about, only large companies able to afford this type of access, or individual researchers will be able, and obviously we understand those who are working with data that you probably need a sufficient amount of data in order to make some conclusions and insights, and that will be related to, obviously, as you mentioned, to some investment. So can you maybe share more about the fee structure, what logic you guys are following here, ballpark figures, anything?
yeah, as I mentioned, TILAS2 is still working on a concrete implementing act on the fee structures. There's in the EHDS regulations already a few basic statements on the fact that fees should be based on the workload involved for data holders and health data access body, that they should be reasonable, that there can be made a difference between research institutes and industrial countries, but this difference should also be reasonable. And it's also stated that a health data access body should not survive on fees. So we should be sustainable in some way without the fees as well, which it can contribute, but it's not the goal that we are self-sustainable based on what we ask for cost saving. It should be in relation to a small effort we do. Once our environment is created, it will be a limited effort. Still, we will do the work, and the HDAPs will charge a limited fee for the data access, but the goal is actually to have open data. So we don't want to make it too expensive for people, because we don't want to reduce in that way indirectly the access to data. But on the other hand, there's a lot of fear coming, of course, from data holders. Like, we've done so much effort to collect this data, and now we just have to release it just like that. We are obliged to release our data. There's timeframes also set, for example, for clinical trial data that cannot be requested before certain publications. I don't know it by heart what the time span has been in between, but so there's already some general regulations that I think are reasonably fair, that now will need to be worked out more in detail and will be part of the implementing act, so that it's not individually decided by member states, also not by HDAPs, like what charge will be fees. It should be, there's general regulations about it, and the European Commission will also monitor that. We will have to be very transparent on the fees that are asked. Also, the fees from the data holders should be very transparent. So in that sense, yeah, it's a give and take, you want to make sure that data holders also get the benefit from it if they have to release interesting data that everybody finds useful. Yeah, it's logic that it should not release it just for free. It should be in relation to the efforts they done to collect it, and what is reasonable there. That's fairly under discussion at the moment, but that's the basic concepts that are being discussed now. I hope that's sufficient.
The question was really about incentive, whether there is incentive to make money out of these fees or not.
No, that shouldn't. No.
Yeah. Thank you, Inch. I have many questions, but I will ask only one, or maybe privately. The one is, you spoke about this register and you spoke about transparency, but will it be a register where all organizations asking to have access to data this register itself will
You
be,
mean the catalog?
yeah, or catalog, I don't know, but
Yeah.
will it be public? I mean,
Yeah, of course. That's
so,
the whole goal.
because
Yeah.
maybe there is a kind of risk that people will not want to ask data because they could be seen as people who want data. I don't know. I'm just kind of surprised by this.
Well, there's an obligation of data holders to make their metadata available. So everybody should know which data is available where. The metadata, not on variable level, not the content of the data as such, but every researcher, every policymaker should be able to know where can I find which health data.
Okay.
And then that's the catalog. So it gives a description of health data, where it can be found, at which level it be found. It will have a link soon from which you can directly request the data. And it's up to us to give that, to be very transparent in that. But it's an obligation of data holders to have, to show and to have metadata
okay,
records
but
available.
not the other way. I understood incorrectly. It's not the people who want to have access to data. They don't have to. That's not public.
Data requests will be publicly available as well. We have to work completely transparent. So every data request that is filed at our level should be registered, monitored, and somewhere, somehow, we will have to build a dashboard in which you can find where was this data being shared, how long did it take before it got there, what was being done with that data, and the results should be made publicly available afterwards as well. It's 100% transparency policy. If we will make it, that's actually the global idea and the European idea, which we really support very much.
Silvia had a question before.
Yeah, well, it's related to what you both said. So, well, it's kind of a suggestion question. Why don't we put all this on the blockchain? It will solve your transaction checking, because every transaction is checked. You would have to define who's the data users, because if the data is owned by me as a person and by some hospital or whatever institution I went and has my data, you would have to clearly define who and what amount of data, almost 100% of the data is split between 50 mine because I generated and 50 the hospital because it spent effort and money to take it. And then basically all the incomes, because you said someone has to pay, well, the users, the one that use the data will have to pay. All the transactions that the money goes and the amounts would be charged similarly to how gas fees are on blockchain. So we can use the already existing blockchain technology. We put all the health data there, track everything.
You cannot put large files on blockchain. You need to use IPFS or something.
But
You can put caches.
Yes, blockchain doesn't scale, by the way. It's very tough, doesn't scale.
Sorry, could you repeat?
Well, this is Hans here. So blockchain indeed theoretically sounds good, but it doesn't scale. I'll send a link to some information about that.
Really, he's actually right.
Definitely not for large files, and we're thinking about big files. Think about ultimately even your genome and other stuff, very tough. And another challenge is with genome, you're identified by definition. So how to anonymize genomic data? Some other challenges.
Definitely.
Just ask for those speakers if they still have here.
Yeah, okay. So because we don't have so much time left, first of all,
These people are listening, Didier.
yes, indeed, it's it's a very nice dynamic here. First of all, I would like to ask you, Hans, or Alex, or George, if you guys have any questions for people here.
Full shot, so not
Or
for me now.
comments or thoughts,
No.
all are welcome.
No. The only thing I made a comment in the chat is on the question on cross-boundary sharing. It is a must, right? That's why the EHDS is here. So, and the rare diseases is one of the best cases, right? If there's only 2 people in Flanders, in Belgium, it's not enough. I posted some comments in the chat to also answer that question a little bit.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Okay, so
So the
Indy,
last question.
last question of the day.
Yeah.
So very practical question. So when you're gonna deploy technological solution, the ecosystem that you mentioned, this say data processing place, you're gonna do it with vendors, or there is some sort of unit or a team that is going to execute on this solution?
Well, we're actually still working on that, on how to do it, because we want to do it in an independent way. We will not have access to the data as such. That will be in the secure processing environment. So there's practically, we're still searching whether we will develop it ourselves or use an existing system, but that's also quite a difficult idea because you don't want to just put it on the market and have a software just like that. So that's at the moment actually very, very much on a discussion, and we will need to take a decision very soon, because the secure processing environment is one of the first implementing acts. So in 2 years, we will need to have a secure processing environment. So we're discussing very intensively at the moment about that, and we hope to have an answer in, let's say, a few weeks, but discussions are ongoing on that. But we're actually considering the remarks you gave.
I mean, there are some nice examples in the Middle East that you can potentially.
Well, Finland has a very nice environment as well. And we're actually mainly discussing with them now to see, but there's many other examples. French Health Data Hub has good examples as well. So we're seeing how we can solve it and what we will do.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure people still have a lot of questions, but tomorrow we have a dedicated time slot for that. So please give your questions. It's very interesting to have these conversations. So the first day ends here. Thank you all for joining and participating. Tomorrow we are back 1 hour earlier, so we will start at 9 tomorrow. And all the people online, I request that you join us again tomorrow, and I'm sure the discussions will be equally exciting. Thank you.
My question is, will the comments from the chat be made available to those of us who are not on Zoom? There seems some great links I see clicking up on the screen.
I'm gonna copy paste the whole. Yeah, I will copy paste the whole chat in email, let's say, and I'll forward it to everyone so you have all the links.
You might want to censor a few bits.
Yeah, okay. But yes, I will try that all the links are given to you. Okay, thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Enjoy the dinner. Sorry I couldn't be there.
Okay, everyone. It was very nice, very interesting stuff. Goodbye.
See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
See you tomorrow, Didier, and yeah.
I will make it. See you.